So we are now calling to order, again with the trustee gavel, our regular city council meeting. I'll do it louder. It is now 6:11 on Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021. May we please have a roll call?
Yes, Councilmember Hensy.
Here.
Councilmember Lyons.
Here.
Councilmember Mosca.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kranz.
Here.
And Mayor Blakespear.
Here.
Record will show all members of the City Council are present.
Okay, thank you. I invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any, or actually we do. We have a proclamation declaring the month of July Parks and Recreation Month. So I have a proclamation that I'm going to read, and I think it's going to be accepted by, who? Is it Jennifer Campbell? There she is with her hand up. Okay, great. Let me just pull up the proclamation, which I have up, but have to locate on my desktop. Oh, there we are. Okay, so here's the trustee proclamation. Whereas, it's funny because this whereas it starts just right about when our city started. So it's since 1985, America has celebrated July as the nation's official Park and Recreation Month. And whereas parks, recreation, and arts improve the quality of life and make communities thrive now and in the future. And whereas parks, life and enriching places, spaces, events, and programs, which facilitate social connections, aid in therapy, and promote healthy lifestyles and lifelong learning. And whereas parks, beaches, and trails provide access to the serenity and the inspiration of nature and outdoor spaces, as well as preserve and protect the historic, natural, and cultural resources in our community. And whereas residents value their public community and senior center and library, which provide accessible meeting space and opportunities to engage in play, the performing arts, sports, and exercise for residents of all ages. And whereas the residents of our 5 unique communities, making up one great city, benefit from the wide range of services, facilities, and programs provided by the city's Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department, further adding value to community neighborhoods, strengthening our community's image, and providing a sense of place. And whereas during the COVID-19 pandemic, outdoor spaces, including parks, beaches, and trails, provided residents an outlet for exercise, mental stimulation, and general health and virtual programming, which helped bridge socialization and education for senior citizens in the community. And whereas, this is the final whereas, July is celebrated across the nation as Parks and Recreation Month. Now, therefore, I, Catherine S. Blakespear, Mayor of the City of Encinitas, along with all City Council members, do hereby proclaim July 2021 as Park and Recreation Month, recognizing that parks, recreation, and arts enrich the lives of residents in the City of Encinitas, and urge everyone to fully utilize and enjoy our parks, beaches, trails, open space, facilities, and recreational opportunities. So I think we all recognize that our parks are one of our, and recreation and cultural arts and beaches are among the highest elements of our quality of life here in the city. So we're happy to take a moment here at the beginning of this meeting to recognize that and have our Parks Director say a few words. We are very grateful for all the work you do to make sure that our residents are able to access these great places and this great programming. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it to you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. First, we just want to say thank you to City Council for all of your continued support with all of our facilities and our programs and our art. I also want to thank City Manager Anto for her support. I do want to thank our residents and all of our participants. Without you using our wonderful facilities and programs, we wouldn't have a job. We were here for you. And lastly, I do want to thank my staff. And I have Travis, Carlin, and Annette Saul with me tonight, but they are the best staff. They have the best hearts. They are hardworking. They have wonderful customer service. And we're just so honored and happy that we can provide these wonderful facilities and programs for the best residents that we have. And thank you again so much for your support. And we do have just a short video. It is pretty short, maybe 2 minutes or so. If Kieran could go ahead and cue that up. But thank you so much again for everyone's support. We're so happy with what we do.
were some great new photos. We're really living the dream. When you see that video, I mean, it just, yeah, we are. We're so lucky.
It's all Nick Buck and it's all the community. So again, thank you so much for your support. Like I said, we love what we do and thank you for letting us do it.
The picture of Santa Claus on the 101. That's cool.
Yeah, all the photos of us gathering together in our parks and facilities. Can't wait to do that again.
Yeah, that was a great video. A lot of those pictures I've never seen. I don't think I've seen really any of them. I mean, they're like, those are new ones. It's great. And my daughter has just started junior lifeguards this week, so I know the programming is going great. And it's kicking her butt, but she's the fastest swimmer and fastest runner on the beach of the girls. So she's really excited about that. So thank you for all that you do. I know all of us are very grateful.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move now to oral communications.
Yes, Mayor, and we do have approximately 10. Our first speaker is Gerald Kessler, and I just remind all of our speakers that you do have 3 minutes, and this portion is for items that are not listed on the agenda.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can start when ready.
Thank you for that beautiful video. It's choking me up from this year. But anyway, and thanks for the Tony Krantz talking about legacy and historical things. So this brings me to my weekly talk about, I would like to speak in regards to the Staver project on Melba Road that is slated to tear down a grove of mature Torrey pines, in addition to 200 trees and a historical home built in 1938. Why is Brian Staver allowed to drill loudly in the neighborhood last week with no notice to the neighborhood? This is gross negligence to the breeding and the nesting of the wildlife in this area at this time. How is this developer not abiding by the recommendations by the city environmental project manager? Why is he allowed to disrupt the neighborhood and the nesting for rare species so he can check something off of his list? Poor Lois Kelly, my neighbor and a senior, is directly impacted by the environmental nightmare. She told me her cat was so scared he wouldn't even come out. You know how important animals are for seniors. This project is terrible. It needs to be stopped any way possible. It is a borderline on elder abuse. As I mentioned before, there's several longtime members of the community who had to seek medical attention because of the impact of this project onto their lives. It is causing them pain and sadness. Please help the community work for preservation of this property. Legal action is not the answer. The property is perfect for the botanical gardens and park-like space. There could be land donated to Oak Crest Middle School, the Boys and Girls Club, and the community center. I would like council to work with the elder Staver family, not Brian, to preserve this property. It's going to be yours and their legacy. It's right to seal the deal for the environmental sound living in Encinitas. The neighborhood will remember the Stavers in a bad light rather than the stewards of the land that they wore throughout the years. Please help the community preserve and unite this space for future generations. Let us fix together. Oh, and by the way, someone stole the red and white sign on Melba about the environmental 31 home nightmare of the Staver project. And somebody saw Brian removing flyers we made in support for preserving this property and working with the neighborhood. A news flash to Brian: work with the neighborhood and don't go on late night vandalism rides. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joan Wapner. Joan, you can start when ready.
Good evening, Mayor Blakespear and council members. It was only about a month ago that I spoke here and asked what could be done to get the senior dances going again at our community center. And I want to say thanks so much, because today was a big day. It opened up. We had our first dance, and it was wonderful to see all those happy, smiling seniors. And I want to thank you so much, Mayor Blakespear, for having asked to expedite this issue, and for Pam Antle to have followed up on it so quickly. So thanks from myself, from Sharon and Marty Cooper and the Dancing Seniors. We're all very, very grateful to you for making this happen. We want to extend an invitation to you and council members and everyone else involved in this endeavor to come to one of our dances. We meet now every Wednesday. Today was the first one, as I said, 12:30 to 2:30. And we'd love to have you come by and see what you've created. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Gordon. Barbara, you can start when ready.
Thank you very much. I participated in the Encinitas City Council meeting last week regarding Measure H implementation. I am the adult advisor to a Hispanic youth group in the San Diego region. My youth who really care about their families, but are especially concerned with their siblings' use of marijuana. As the California Department of Public Health recently indicated, the most vulnerable demographics are 21 to 24 who are experiencing a sharp increase in marijuana use. My personal and professional experience indicates that the ages of 21 to 24 is an extremely vulnerable time for acquiring the education and skills to launch into a career choice, setting patterns of lifelong good decision-making. As the city looks to consider Measure S, I recommend that the city implement whatever protective measures you can up front. As adults, we cannot enable marijuana businesses into a community and then expect there will be no harm. For example, Big Marijuana has engineered plants to increase the potency of THC, the psychoactive component of marijuana. Growing evidence shows high potency THC products are more likely to bring on or worsen mental health issues in our young people. Because Colorado has seen firsthand the devastation of high potency THC have on their young people, in May, Colorado House and Senate passed a bill, HB 21-1317, regulating marijuana concentrates. The bill is now on its way to the governor, where it is expected to be signed. My hope is California will follow their example. Thank you for letting me speak this evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mark Wilcox. Mark, you can start when ready.
Okay, good evening, City Council members. Since the City Council meeting last week, a trio of Union Tribune opinions came out about the marijuana industry in San Diego. I was appalled by an article from a cannabis entrepreneur, in other words, someone who makes money from marijuana, by her statement that no one ever dies from marijuana use. This was an astonishing statement, since there was a highly publicized death in San Diego from the ingestion of marijuana gummy bears and the subsequent lawsuit. Thankfully, as a counterpoint, another article from this trio of opinions from a parent dealt with the dangerous aspects of marijuana use that affect the mortality of youth. Quote, research shows that early cannabis use is linked to self-harm and mortality in youth, especially if they are already experiencing mood disorders. This is from the end quote, and this is from the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatric Edition. However, of the three opinion pieces in the Union Tribune, only one mentioned the harms and risks of marijuana use. Where was a fourth author, perhaps from the science, research, or medical fields, to tell us what they see? Since I've retired from the media field, I wonder, why is the information the public receiving not balanced or factual? As a parent of 4 and grandparent of 13, I continue to be angered by the dismissal of marijuana harms, primarily by those who stand to profit from it. I share this experience with you tonight because I am concerned that the City Council members, staff, and Encinitas community members will also be the recipients of disingenuous information. However, I know Encinitas will work to make our neighborhoods clean and safe and our youth's mental and physical health protected, not put at risk. It's up to you and you have our support to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cindy Cremona. Cindy, you can start when ready.
Since you are the leader of our equity committee and have also made running for a state Senate seat your priority, how would you vote as our Senate representative for Senate Bills 9 and 10? Do you think that local control should be taken away from the residents? This is of particular concern since our Prop A vote is under siege by the city and HCD. We are awaiting the judge's decision on the recent court case on whether Prop A will be abolished or if the people's vote will be upheld. I'd be curious to understand your position. This short video clearly outlines the impact both of these bills will have on all communities, and specifically minority, lower, and middle income families. Kathy, can you cue up the video?
Here you go.
And I have lived here for more than 30 years. Leimert Park is one of the oldest, stable, middle-class Black communities in the country. Ray Charles lived here. Ella Fitzgerald lived here. Charles White lived here. In the California legislature right now, SB 9 and SB 10 will eliminate single-family zones. That threatens my community, and that threatens yours too. With SB 9, developers can tear down one house and put up 4 in its place. With SB 10, they can put up a 10-unit apartment house, and they can do it as often as they like. The threat is everywhere. Oakland, Sacramento, San Jose, upstate, downstate, no place is safe. Politicians promise affordable housing, more diversity, minimal displacement. Don't believe it. Where laws eliminate single-family zoning, neighborhoods get richer, whiter, younger. Families build wealth when they own their own homes. As neighborhoods upzone, existing home prices go down. One family sells, density increases, more families sell, and existing prices drop more. Wealth evaporates. Where do people go when their neighborhood gets torn out from under them? Disruptive development turns current homeowners into permanent renters. It's a massive transfer of wealth to corporate landlords and major developers. SB 9 and SB 10 rob homeowners of an essential way to build generational wealth in communities of color. Leimert Park is the seat of Black culture. We've got history that's alive today. If that dies, it's gone forever. I am tired of politicians trying to sell us a lie. Developers always sending me flyers, people calling saying they want to buy my home. I'm not selling. I'm staying right here.
Cindy, do you have anything else left to say? You have about 10 seconds.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Wendy Benson.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I am proud to say that I was born and raised in Encinitas. I graduated from La Costa Canyon and I now teach 7th grade. After listening to the Encinitas City Council meeting last week regarding marijuana businesses, I want to emphasize the importance of public safety and also maintaining the community character in our city. It is our responsibility as adults to create a healthy environment, not only for ourselves, but for our children as well. My students are the future of Encinitas, the Encinitas that we all know and love, the Encinitas that we saw in the very beginning of tonight's meeting in that proclamation video. That's the Encinitas that we love, and that's what our children are growing up in. I teach them every day about making the right choices and the negative effects of drugs. How will they truly learn the right choices if they leave school and see a pot shop on their way home? As you introduce drugs into our city, I'm afraid that drug use will increase among the youth. When drug use is commercialized, young people are going to see it as normal and acceptable. Please, please be cautious for the youth and the 49% of the Encinitas residents who do not want marijuana in our city. Mayor Blakespear, you have said that you are very closely connected to what creates quality of life. As you move forward with Measure H, please preserve the quality of life for adults and children alike. The council is supposed to work for the best interest of our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nancy Perry Sheridan. Nancy, you can start when ready.
Good evening, Encinitas City Council. Scripps Encinitas Hospital offers an extraordinary youth program called Young Leaders in Healthcare, and I serve as the youth advisor. Our regional healthcare club offers skill building, leadership tools, and connections to healthcare professionals. In usual times, a 5-week summer internship is available as well. High school students in grades 9 through 12 explore healthcare careers and apply this broad knowledge base to develop optimal plans for their future. I tell you this tonight because of the City Council discussion last week about marijuana businesses coming to town. It is my many years of working with youth that have shown me that nothing can derail a teen's future like marijuana can. While I understand that the language of Measure H cannot be changed for 3 years, it's critical that the city develop protective measures such as limiting the appeal of marijuana through changes to municipal code, including retail and product signage, marketing techniques, and developing oversight measures. We know that teens vaping tobacco and marijuana prefer flavors. So definitely this is a municipal code change that we could make to add marijuana to the tobacco ban on flavored products. And we should be prepared to fund oversight efforts, including compliance and code enforcement, to enable and direct the sheriff to monitor marijuana businesses and do minor decoy operations. Regulatory agencies, such as the state's Bureau of Cannabis Control, will not have the same level of interest in our community, nor safeguard our community with the attention and effort that we would. We ask you as public servants for our city to modify the municipal code in order to mitigate the impact of the incoming marijuana businesses. Plan, prepare, reduce risk, and create an optimal environment. Please apply the same recommendations we offer our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ruben Flores. Karen, is Ruben the phone number? Do you know?
I can't tell. I'm asking them to unmute and I'll see if they respond.
It doesn't appear so I'll move to our next speaker, who is Christine Schindler.
Good evening. This is Christine Schindler. I live in East Encinitas. So happy Parks and Rec Month. That was fun to see the video. I'm here to be all positive. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank City of Encinitas staff in particular. This has been quite a year and a half, a lot of COVID pivots, a lot of changes and changing again. And as I've worked with Park and Rec staff and school district staff and engineering and other staff at the with the City of Encinitas, I've really appreciated how people have been able to adapt and modify how they do things, including Kathy, who has done an amazing job of conducting the virtual city council meetings and reminding everyone when they're muted and so forth. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. And last week, I was on the city council meeting call, and I'm still figuring it out as a community member and a advocate as far as the process goes. So I kind of wondered how it would happen when I wanted to speak to a consent calendar item that someone else was pulling. So it was a little clunky. So thank you for being patient with me for that particular item. I'm learning. I'm trying to be patient and persistent and figuring out the best way to collaborate to get things done in the community. So I just appreciate city staff so much. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. And then our next speaker is Katrina Priest.
Hello, hi. I am a school administrator who listened to last week's city council meeting and felt that I should tell you about the disruptive influence that marijuana use has been this year in our San Diego Unified School District students. This past year and a half has been a very challenging time, and I am concerned that many students have come to believe that using marijuana will ease stress or anxiety. After all, that's what the marijuana companies say on their social media and websites and other aggressive marketing materials. As an example of the student perceptions, marijuana is the most used drug by teens in San Diego Unified School District and is the primary drug of choice for adolescents entering county-funded treatment facilities. As the city implements Measure H, it should involve a significant oversight of marijuana product advertising and where it's located or distributed, especially at city special events. The city will need to conduct regular enforcement activities to prevent sales to those under 21 via delivery or purchase from its permitted marijuana storefronts. And to get to the real culprit in the attractiveness of marijuana products to youth and young adults, Encinitas should adopt the premier public health strategy, a ban on marijuana and tobacco flavored products. After all, adults are not particularly that interested in flavors, but for young people, it is the centerpiece of the marijuana marketplace. Thank you for your time tonight, City Council.
Thank you. And I do not see Ruben Flores. So that does conclude oral communications.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Councilmember Lyons has her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Blakespear. In response to a couple of the public speakers tonight, I'm wondering if we can put on a future agenda to discuss how we can move forward, perhaps with a subcommittee to get more public input on Measure H and how we integrate it into our community and into our code. Would that be an appropriate way to introduce that idea?
So what you're asking for is a future agenda item to talk about possibly forming a subcommittee?
Yeah, I think of it in terms of a subcommittee because we've done that on other issues where we want to get some public input. We're getting some public input through this oral communications portion of our agenda, but my suggestion is that we formalize our approach to it a little bit more and consider, maybe it's even broader, but consider how to best get public input as we craft how we move forward with addressing Measure H.
Okay, let's hear from the Deputy Mayor. He has his hand up.
Well, I was just going to say that Councilmember Mosca and I served on a subcommittee related to cannabis issues when Prop 64 passed, and it was quite contentious. And the difference there was that we were exploring the possibility of either adopting an ordinance as a council or perhaps going to the voters, which is what we had eventually committed to doing, and then our only possible cultivator went away. But I think it's important to keep in mind that in this particular case, the attorneys are the most important part of this process because they have to square anything that we want to do with Measure H itself. So I'm not sure that injecting elected officials into the conversation is going to be all that helpful. So, I think that the city attorney knows that we are looking for her office to kind of lead with the city manager. And then ultimately, it's my hope that both of them understand that as a council, we want to be as restrictive as possible given the constraints of the voter initiative process. So I wouldn't support, I don't know that adding an agenda item to possibly put a subcommittee together makes a whole lot of sense.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mosca.
So I see Leslie about to jump in. And so I won't say anything except to say that this is, since it's not on the agenda, I won't really say much, but ditto to to Deputy Mayor Krantz. And I would say that that we should probably explain the process of getting items on the agenda. So you're welcome to submit a city council initiated item. And that's how you get an item on the agenda for us to discuss whether or not there's enough support to move forward with whatever item you want to move forward with. So just wanted to let you know that, because now that there's at least 2 people speaking on this, none of us can speak on it because it's not on the agenda. Just like Deputy Mayor Krantz has an item tonight on the agenda, he submitted an initiated item, and that's how he got it for us to discuss on the agenda.
Yep, Councilmember Mosca, I do understand that mechanism for doing it. So thanks for reminding me.
Yes, thank you. That's all I was going to say is once we start discussing specifics, it has Brown Act implications, and I would be happy to work with Councilmember Lyons to let her know what our office is doing, as Deputy Mayor explained, and certainly she can make a determination if she wants to bring a council initiated item under your process.
Okay, great. Well, we've exhausted that. Thank you. That's good to know. Let's see. Okay, no, Deputy Mayor, you don't want to say anything else, right?
Nope, that was
okay. Just want to make sure. All right, so we do not have closed session. Thank you to the people who called in on oral communications. We did not have closed session today. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the posted agenda. And then moving to the consent calendar, a member of the public has requested to speak on item 8O.
Okay, so the balance of the consent calendar is in front of you.
I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar without 8O.
Second.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Councilmember Hensy?
Yes.
Councilmember Lyons?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosca?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Krantz?
Yes.
And Mayor Blakespear?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. We will now move to item 8O. And our speaker is Christine Schindler.
Okay, go ahead, Christine.
All right, Christine Schindler, East Encinitas, not to extend your evening any longer than it needs to be. However, I did want to speak in favor of the efforts that are being made in the past and the future, and presently with regard to crossing guards. I did ask some questions today to be a little more informed as far as how it's being set up. I was involved in the crossing guard effort when it first started at the city of Solana Beach. I would encourage any and all of you to spend time next school year to just spend some time on one of these corners. It's an unbelievable experience. I'm so glad that it's being co-funded by the city and by the school district. Encinitas Union, I would just encourage for you to consider that every dollar spent on something like this that I would consider non-infrastructure is worth about $100 to $1,000 of infrastructure, hardscape. So this is very important. So right now it's 6 crossing guards across several schools, and I would hope that in the future, if it's needed to be expanded, you would. This is critical part of Safe Routes to School and encouraging more kids to walk, ride, and roll, and for parents and neighbors to be safe motorists in school zones. So thank you so much for funding crossing guards. It's very important.
Thank you,
That
Christine.
concludes speakers.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt you. Councilmember Mosca.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an important program that that was kind of developed in the school district liaison committee meeting with former school board president of EUSD and a couple other folks at San Diego Union High School District, and actually with tremendous leadership from my former colleague on our former colleague on the City Council, Assembly Member Tasha Berner Horvath. And just surprised how this program has taken off and how it's just growing in usefulness and success throughout our system. And so happy to see it back here and reauthorized and being utilized by USD. Hopefully we can expand this. I know that the language in the agreement allows for San Diego Union High School District to utilize it, as well as Cardiff School District's schools. So hopefully one day we'll have some crossing guards in those areas as well. And I encourage all the school districts to take advantage of it because it's a great program. And as Christine says, it really does save tremendous amount of dollars and lives. So good to see it successful. I'll move this item because it's just such an important item and I believe in it. So I'll move this item.
And I'll second.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and vote.
All right. Councilmember Hensy?
Yes.
Councilmember Lyons?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosca?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Crayons?
Yes.
And Mayor Blakespear?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. That does conclude the consent calendar. That takes us to first action item 10A.
Okay.
And there are no speakers on this item.
Okay, and this is the same topic that we covered at the beginning of the meeting. So
Correct.
Consideration of issuing the Encinitas Public Financing Authority 2021 federally taxable lease revenue bonds Series A for Pacific View for the purpose of refunding the Encinitas Public Financing Authority 2014 lease revenue bonds Series B. So should we have another staff report or what was recommended here?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I may say, it is the exact presentation as the one that you heard for the Financing Authority. It's just the city's side, but all the information is correct. And you have the recommended actions, which are a little different. We wanted to approve the selection of Hilltop Securities as underwriter, but the rest are the same as the Financing Authority.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mosca.
Since this is refinancing of existing bonds and it's really taking advantage of the market, lower interest rates, and we'll be saving $79,000 a year with this refinance, $1.7 million over the lifetime of the bond issuance, and the maturity date does not change. This is just a win-win for our taxpayers, and so I will make a motion that we accept the staff's recommendations and that we move the staff's recommendations.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll second the motion.
Okay, great.
Councilmember Hensy?
Yes.
Councilmember Lyons?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosca?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Crayons?
Yes.
Mayor Blakespear?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Now we're on to item 10B, which is a similar item. So would you like to take this, Finance Director McBroom?
Yes, thank you. This is another refunding, and it's for the refunding of the City of Encinitas Community Facilities District Number 1 for Encinitas Ranch public improvements. And I just wanted to remind you that the city is an agent, and this debt is not the city's debt. So the CFD was formed to issue bonds for the Encinitas Ranch public improvements, and $39.59 million was originally issued in 1998. They were then refunded in 2004, and then those bonds were refunded again in 2012. Of that debt, 20.7 million. You know, I'm sorry. Do you show the public financing? It's hard for me to see what we're sharing. I think I'm showing this wrong screen. I apologize. Let me show you.
You were showing CFD.
Oh, I was.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, it's showing this wrong thing on my screen. Let me try again. My apologies. It's a CFD again, right? I can't see it on my screen. Does it show the CFD, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You are on slide number 2.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, of that debt, $20.7 million is currently owed, and interest rates ranging from 3.125 to 5%. And by advance refunding the 2012 bonds, we will lock in low interest rates and provide savings for the property owners within that district of $200,000 a year. And then this debt is secured by the special tax revenues paid by the property owners within that CFD. Again, we'll be saving $200,000 per year, and it's a total savings of $1.5 million. The property tax owners will realize the savings immediately with the next 2021-22 tax roll. The other important thing to note is that we are keeping the same maturity date at September 1st, 2030. We're expecting to receive a credit rating from Standard & Poor's on July 6th. We're going to close on July 21st, or I'm sorry, price on July 21st and then close on August 4th. And staff is recommending the approval of the recommended actions on this slide. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Once again, good news. It's awesome that we can take advantage of these advantageous rates for taxpayers to save money. I will point out that these are, because they're Mello-Roos and they're Community Facilities District bonds, the taxpayers of Encinitas Ranch have been paying for these bonds, and so we are essentially saving each taxpayer of Encinitas Ranch the money. In addition, it's my understanding that this will have a positive impact on Encinitas Ranch Golf Authority, who is paying their fair share under an agreement with the city and the CFD folks to contribute to the repayment of these bonds, even though they're legally not required to do so. So in addition to this benefit of this lower interest rate, it's I think going to be appreciated by the taxpayers of Encinitas Ranch that over the pandemic, the number of rounds of golf that were played was significant. And so it would be my expectation that Encinitas Ranch Golf Authority will be able to pay their fair share in at least the next few years. So all good news. And with that, I would move the recommended actions.
Second.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Hensy?
Yes.
Councilmember Lyons?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosca?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Krantz?
Yes.
And Mayor Blakespear?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Great. Now we're on to item 10C. This is introduction of ordinance number 2021-02, which amends the inclusionary housing regulations to increase the inclusionary housing percentage requirements to better address the need for affordable units for all residential development, provide for an in-loop fee as an alternative method of compliance, and adopt a new affordable housing impact fee for residential care facilities. So we will turn it over to staff to take this. Do we have any public comments on this, or how many?
Yes, we do, Mayor. We have approximately 4.
Okay, so let's have the staff report, then we'll have public comments and then council questions and comments.
All right, I'll share my screen. All right, everybody can see that okay? So good evening. Tonight before you again is the Affordable Housing Ordinance Amendments. And I'll go ahead and get right in. So since 2018, the city has been working on inclusionary housing ordinance, and even before then. On August 8th, 2018, the city council adopted ordinance number 2018-3, which increased the inclusionary requirement to 15% for low-income households and 10% for very low-income households for both rental and for sale units. It authorized the use of accessory dwelling units to meet the inclusionary requirement up to 5 units, decreased the project applicability to 7 units or more, and established the affordability time limit to be in perpetuity. City Council also directed staff to prepare a nexus study, a gap analysis, and an economic feasibility analysis to evaluate further opportunities for affordable housing units citywide and on sites proposed to be upzoned to 30 dwelling units per acre. City engaged Kaiser Marston Associates, otherwise known as KMA, to prepare an inclusionary housing economic financial feasibility, as well as a nexus analysis. On September of 2018, the City Council reviewed and discussed the results of the preliminary economic feasibility, and at that meeting directed staff to present staff was directed to present the preliminary results of the economic feasibility analysis at a planning commission workshop. And this workshop was held in October of 2018. After receiving input from the public, including residents and developers, the planning commission recommended to expand the financial feasibility analysis in the nexus study. It was also recommended that the residential care units and their impact on the need for affordable housing be also included in the nexus analysis scope of work. On October 24th, 2018, City Council authorized the amendment to KMA's contract for these additional costs and revised scope of work. At the joint City Council and Planning Commission study session in December of 2019, City staff and KMA presented the results of the inclusionary affordable housing real estate financial feasibility analysis, otherwise known as the feasibility analysis, and the affordable housing nexus analysis. For potential increase in inclusionary housing requirements, the in lieu fee, and an impact fee for residential care facilities. Direction was provided to staff to move forward with the recommendations for an increase of the inclusionary requirement, an in lieu fee, and an affordable housing impact fee. At the December 2019 meeting, the findings of the studies that were provided and discussed with Planning Commission and City Council. The study methodology followed best professional practices and is sufficiently rigorous to allow an assessment of whether the rental inclusionary requirement, in combination with other factors that influence feasibility, is economically feasible, as identified in their methodology that's included on page 4 of the feasibility analysis, as well as pages 6 and 31 of the nexus analysis. In summary, KMA concluded that the following findings are supported by their analysis. An increase in the inclusionary requirement by 5% is financially feasible. Increasing the inclusionary requirement by 10% is financially feasible for some. The nexus analysis determined that the maximum affordable housing fees range from $32 to $66 per square foot, depending on the project types for residential projects, and that the maximum fee of $48.70 per square foot could be applied to residential care facilities. And the study also identified that the affordability gap to create a low-income unit is $242,000. In February 18th, 2021, Planning Commission began review of the proposed ordinance and asked for additional information, which was presented at the Planning Commission meeting on March 18th. The information included additional data on inclusionary requirements and in lieu fees within the region, in lieu fee scenarios, and further review of the feasibility analysis. At the meeting in March of 2021, Planning Commission continued to review the proposed ordinance as well as voted on recommendations for the inclusionary ordinance and program components and continued that hearing. On May 6th and May 20th, Planning Commission continued their review and made votes as described on this slide. Staff incorporated the proposed modifications, including the 50% inclusionary requirement for property zoned with the R30 overlay in the underline and strike through format in red to the draft ordinance 2021-02 as provided in attachment 1. Now we'll go over the recommendations on the following slides. So overall, all the amendments are located within chapter 30.41. And these amendments include inclusionary housing requirements apply to all residential development of all sizes, provides additional clarifying language for in lieu fee applicability, creates a new housing impact fee for residential care facilities. In addition, the ordinance amendment include other clarifying amendments, including replacing affordable units, the term affordable units with the term inclusionary units, and other amendments. And these proposed amendments can be seen in attachment 1. So in the first section, which is the definition section, new definitions and modifications to existing definitions are provided for further clarification that are applying to chapter 30.41. In the sections for 30.41-30 for applicability and 0.040 for exemptions, additional amendments were made. So based on the findings of the feasibility analysis and on the May 20th, 2021 meeting, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to amend the city's inclusionary requirement so that it will be applied to all new residential development within the city, including additions of 500 square feet or more, but this would not include ADUs. Residential units of 6 or fewer units and expansions or additions of 500 square feet or more have the choice of constructing an affordable ADU or paying an in lieu fee. These sections have been modified to reflect these new requirements. Currently, the inclusionary housing requirement applies to only development of 7 or more units. Additional exemptions have been included, including the replacement of residential development within 2 years, accessory dwelling units, and density bonus units. So for an inclusionary housing program to be an effective tool for creating housing, it must not unduly burden new development to such a degree that it renders new development financially infeasible. To that end, the recommended inclusionary percentages, the proposed in lieu fee described later on, although not the highest maximum threshold that could be imposed on new development, provides for more affordable housing to be built on site. And if a fee is allowed, captures the cost to build that affordable housing unit offsite, as well as without financially overburdening new development. On May 20th, 2021, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend increasing the inclusionary requirement by 5% citywide. This would be 15% for very low or 20% for low, based on the findings and conclusions of the KMA feasibility analysis. In addition to increasing the percentage of inclusionary units required citywide, the proposed ordinance includes an amendment to clarify that if the calculation results in a fractional unit of 1/2 or more, one additional affordable unit shall be provided. And when the calculation results in a fraction of less than 1/2, the applicant may either pay an in lieu fee or provide one additional affordable inclusionary unit. So at the Planning Commission meeting on March 18th, the Planning Commission discussed applying an increased inclusionary requirement for sites within the R30 overlay zone. Additional information was provided to the Planning Commission and the public after the posting of the staff report and prior to the meeting that included a memo on affordable housing programs with inclusionary requirements above 20% and a financial analysis of the R30 overlay zones provided by Commissioner Doyle. The financial analysis was provided to KMA, however, they were not able to compare that analysis until after the meeting. They did provide a chart comparing key assumptions that were utilized, and that was provided with the staff report tonight. On March 18th, 2021, the Planning Commission voted to require 25% very low and 25% low for a total of 50% inclusionary housing requirement for the R30 overlay zone sites. On March 19th, 2021, staff received an email from HCD requesting clarification on this vote. In a subsequent email, HCD noted that sufficient incentives must be in place to support the level of affordability required. In addition, it states that they anticipate HCD will request it to review the KMA report to ensure it is sufficiently rigorous to support whatever affordability level is approved by the City Council. It also provided a link to HCD's authority under AB 1505, which also was provided as part of your staff report. Staff does not believe that AB 1505 applies to the city of Encinitas, since the city has met at least 75% of its share of the arena for above moderate income units. However, under the housing element law and other state housing laws, jurisdictions cannot take actions that constrain new development to such a degree that it would render new development financially infeasible. The purpose of a feasibility study is to serve as the evidence that the ordinance does not unduly constrain the production of housing. The KMA feasibility analysis has been prepared to determine the viability of potential affordable housing requirements. For properties within the R30 overlay zone, the feasibility analysis supports an increase of the inclusionary requirement by 10%, so 20% very low or 25% low on sites with an existing low base density of R5 and below. However, sites with existing non-residential or higher base density residential zoning, R8 and greater, could only support a 5% increase, so 15% very low and 20% low. Based on the public testimony and input received during the public hearings, the Planning Commission believes that a higher inclusionary requirement for properties in the R30 overlay is feasible. On May 20th, 2021, the Planning Commission voted 4-1 to recommend approval of ordinance number 2021-02 to City Council, with the modifications to also include an increase in the inclusionary requirement to the 50% as described prior. Planning Commission also recommended that an additional economic feasibility study be conducted that fully captures developer and landowner profits due to rezoning of the R30 overlay sites. Staff is recommending that based on the results of the KMA analysis, the 15% very low and 20% low inclusionary requirements be applied citywide, including the R30 sites. And this is presented in attachment 2. If City Council wants to pursue a higher inclusionary requirement, such as a 50%, as recommended by the Planning Commission, staff is recommending that City Council direct the preparation of an analysis that would identify the incentives required to support an increased inclusionary requirement for specific locations. So additional amendments include changes to the timing and construction of inclusionary units. Staff is proposing amendments in this section that describe what concurrently means for rental residential development projects, as well as the flexibility of allowing for an alternative schedule for the development to be approved by the approval body and recorded within the affordable housing agreement. In the affordable housing standards and incentives, the amendments in this section provide housing standards for design, size, and dispersion on the sites. The incentive section identifies that the City Council will provide incentives when resources and programs are available to achieve those city's housing goals. In this section on developers' alternative compliance options, it is proposed to renumber this section and add an amendment to subsection A, indicating that an applicant is not able to construct ADUs as an alternative to single-family dwelling units for more than 50% of the total required inclusionary units for a project of 10 or more units, or 5 accessory dwelling units, whichever is less. Currently, the ordinance states that a developer is not allowed to construct more than 5 accessory dwelling units. Additionally, small clarification edits are proposed for subsections B through H. So currently the city's in lieu fees are established on a project by project basis and are based on the difference or gap between what a target household could afford to pay and the median home price for the area. The KMA Nexus analysis looks at the need for lower income households to support the lower compensation jobs created by the rise of new market rate households and the cost of mitigating the increased affordable housing need. The KMA Nexus study determined that the maximum supported fee is determined to range between $32 to $66 per square foot. The funding level required for the city to create affordable housing off-site averages approximately $23.50 per square foot, or $19 per square foot for sale prototypes, excluding the higher off-sale costs for apartment projects from this average. The Planning Commission recommends that the inclusionary requirements be satisfied by the payment of in lieu fee of constructing the inclusionary units for residential developments of less than 7 units, additions of 500 square feet or more, and any net increase in square footage when units are reconstructed or replaced, fractional units less than 1/2, and in cases where the funds can provide financial assistance to an identified affordable housing project, or where that fee payment would create 10% more affordable units than would be created by the on-site provision. These edits are incorporated within the proposed ordinance. The section also establishes that the City Council may establish an in lieu fee by resolution, which may be adjusted annually administratively based on the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index for the LA region. No building permit may be issued by the city for any market rate unit in a residential development until all the in lieu fees for the residential development have been paid to the city. If a project requests a density bonus, incentive, or concession waiver or parking ratio, or is in the R30 overlay zone, there is no option to pay an in lieu fee, and the affordable units must be built. It is also recommended that for residential projects of 6 or fewer units, that the affordable housing fee be applied based on a sliding scale in order to enhance the project feasibility. Though not required, the Planning Commission also voted on March 18th and May 20th of 2021 to recommend that the City Council consider adoption of an in lieu fee of $25 per square foot. This is $5 more than the staff recommendation of $20 per square foot based on the findings identified on page 19 of the feasibility analysis. Staff is requesting direction from City Council tonight on the proposed in lieu fee. Staff will return to City Council at a future meeting date with the resolution to adopt an in lieu fee amount as directed by Council. So during the Planning Commission hearing, staff prepared a table to show the application of in lieu fees for different project scenarios, including additions, which is included within the City Council staff report. The project scenarios range from an addition to a single family home to a new 7-unit subdivision. And currently, the in lieu fee would apply to projects with 6 or fewer new units. And then projects with 7 or more would be required to build the units. And this slide is to show the in lieu fee discussion of what a percentage could look like as applied to a number of units in a project less than 7. Based on the direction from Planning Commission and City Council to include the impact fee, there's proposed a new section 30.41085, affordable housing impact fee for residential care facility. The section establishes that City Council may establish an affordable housing impact fee by resolution and adjusted annually similar to the inclusionary in lieu fee. The new section will require the fee be paid prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy and allows for alternative compliance options. The remodels of existing residential care structures and replacement of destroyed facilities within 2 years would be exempt. KMA completed a residential care nexus analysis levels consistent with the requirements of the government code, and that quantifies the number of jobs added by development of new residential care facilities, the housing needs by lower income for workers who hold these jobs, and the net cost per square foot of building area to mitigate the increased affordable housing need. The analysis was prepared to support a potential affordable housing impact fee applicable to development of new residential care facilities and represents the maximum supportable or legally defensible impact fee level based on that impact of new residential care development and the need for affordable housing. The KMA Nexus analysis identifies the maximum impact fee for residential care facilities in Encinitas based on the cost of mitigating the affordable housing impacts of these facilities is $48.70 per square foot or $44,300 per bed. Staff is recommending City Council consider adoption of an impact fee of $20 per square foot, which is consistent with the staff's recommendation for residential projects based on the findings identified on page 19 of the feasibility analysis, unless otherwise directed. The fee would be applied to aggregate floor area that excludes parking. The fees would be deposited in the Affordable Housing Fund described in the following sections. Staff is requesting direction from City Council on this proposed impact fee tonight, and staff will return as well to City Council at a future meeting with the resolution to adopt this fee. This section provides further clarification on what needs to be included within an affordable housing plan, which is listed on this site. And if introduced tonight at City Council, staff will return to City Council for the adoption on August 11th of 2021, and then submit to California Coastal Commission in July or August with the submittal for their review. Tonight, staff is recommending to either introduce ordinance 2021-02 as recommended by the Planning Commission, which does include the 50% inclusionary requirement for property zoned with R30 overlay, or the ordinance as staff recommends to not include the 50% inclusionary requirement. That's the only difference between the two ordinances as presented tonight. Also, to consider Planning Commission's recommendation to conduct an additional economic feasibility study, and then also to provide further direction to staff on the amount for the proposed inclusionary in lieu fee and the affordable housing impact fee for residential care facilities. And this concludes staff presentation. And also staff wants to recognize that the feasibility analysis was completed in the fall of 2019, and Paul Mara from KMA is available for any questions regarding the feasibility analysis and nexus analysis, and has looked up the market conditions over the last year. And I have asked him to speak now, and then following his information, Barbara Kautz, our special counsel, as well as staff and Paul Mayer are available to answer any questions. Paul?
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, Mayor Blakespear and members of the City Council. As Jennifer described, the KMA feasibility study and nexus analysis were completed in December 2019. So since that time, we have periodically monitored some of the key market and financial inputs that are used in our study to be aware of what the trends are and how it might affect the conclusions of the study. Key variables that we've been monitoring are construction costs, market rents and market prices, as well as the affordable rents and affordable prices, which are a function of the annual income, area median income charts that are released by the state and federal governments, as well as cap rates for the apartment properties. We've gathered this information from local and regional data sources and broader industry data sources. And as you probably are all aware, there's been significant increases in construction costs in the last 1 to 2 years. But equally, there have been substantial increase, particularly in market rents and prices, as well as the affordable rents and prices. So we think the trend tends to support that our conclusions are still valid. The cap rates are consistent with what we've seen most recently in the San Diego region, and looking back at a 5-year survey of cap rates for apartment properties throughout the county. So we feel confident that our conclusions are still valid today and appropriate for your decision making tonight.
Okay, thank you. Was that the end of the staff and Paul Mara presentation?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that. I see the Deputy Mayor has his hand up, but do you mind if we go to the public first, or do you want to go first?
I would ask Mr. Mara if he's had an opportunity to review the letter that was received yesterday from Tim Hutter at Alan Matkins, which was critical of some of his assumptions, and whether you make your statements of standing by your assumptions in spite of what he is asserting.
Yes, Councilmember Kranz, I received the letter this morning from the attorney representing the Building Industry Association. The two major assertions in the letter relate to construction cost escalation and cap rates for apartment properties. We do not dispute that construction costs have increased, as I just mentioned. The letter does not address the sizable increases in market prices and rents that are equivalent to or greater than the increases in construction costs, which would offset any impact on the bottom line of our feasibility analyses. In terms of cap rates, the letter cites 20-year average cap rates in the San Diego region. We do not rely on such a long historical period. We're constantly monitoring current cap rates, and in particular, just looking at the last 5-year trend. We have industry sources, we have actual transactions throughout the county. As you may understand, cap rate is the determinant of taking a rental property, its annual income, and expressing it as a total value. So it's a key ingredient to the feasibility analysis. Our cap rates are very consistent with the local trends. Currently, in the last 5 years, we do not think we're overstating value. So we do think our conclusions are appropriate and reasonable, notwithstanding the assertions in the letter.
Okay, thank you for answering that. So let's go to the public comments and then we'll return to council.
Okay, our first speaker is Joshua Laserson. Joshua, you can start when ready.
Thank you. Mayor Blakespear and City Council members, first I want to thank you for your service and dedication to finding solutions to our affordable housing crisis. I'm making this public comment on behalf of the Encinitas for Equality Housing Committee. E4E's Housing Committee is dedicated to increasing access to affordable housing for our low-income and BIPOC neighbors. The E4E Housing Committee supports an inclusionary rate at a maximum level acceptable to the State of California Housing and Community Development Department, or HCD. The city hired KMA, a well-respected real estate economic advisory firm, to determine an acceptable inclusionary rate in the city of Encinitas, and KMA has presented its recommendations as you were speaking about. We've heard several voices in Encinitas speaking in support of a 50% inclusionary rate, stating that other cities in California, such as Corte Madera, have done this. E4E would be pleased to learn of one successful example of a 50% inclusionary rate affordable housing community. However, we're not aware of such community existing absent financial subsidies provided by the city itself. E4E well understands that if City Council votes to increase the inclusionary rate above a percentage recommended by a reputable economic advisory firm and sets a rate unacceptable to HCD, our city will be at risk of additional lawsuits initiated by HCD and local developers. Encinitas already has spent over $2 million to address lawsuits arising from our pushback against state housing laws. We're frustrated with the flawed state housing laws that support increased density and only require private for-profit developers to build small percentages of affordable units. We don't believe that working with private for-profit developers is the sole pathway to address our affordable housing crisis. We look to the possibility of a 100% affordable housing community as both the most direct and viable means to meet this crisis. The Paloma apartment complex in Carlsbad is an award-winning proof of concept, 100% affordable community. Paloma was created with the strong partnership of the City of Carlsbad and Community Housing Works, a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We're hopeful that the feasibility study being done along the El Camino corridor will present a comparable 100% affordable community location opportunity for the city of Encinitas. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. Let's see, our next speaker is Patricia Vasquez. I do not see her present. So our next speaker is Bob Kent.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. My name is Bob Kent, Encinitas resident, member of Keys for Homes. We're local residents who advocate for the building of affordable homes here in Encinitas. We support the highest inclusionary percentage possible that will produce the most affordable housing and keep the city on sound legal footing. Therefore, at this point, We support the staff recommendation to increase the inclusionary requirements for the R30 overlay zone to 15% very low and 20% low income, along with higher percentages for site zones R5 or less. We also support finding ways to further increase the inclusionary percentage if feasible. As recently requested by HCD, in order to adopt the 50% inclusionary program recommended by the Planning Commission, the city should identify the specific incentives required to support the 50% level to ensure the city does not establish a policy which could be considered a confiscation of private property, putting the city on shaky legal ground. Also, incentives can include more density, taller buildings, and city subsidies, so it's important to clearly understand the nature and consequences of the specific incentives before adopting a higher percentage. Since most of the affordable housing planned on the housing element sites is currently targeted at low income levels, we hope that viable incentives can be identified to create more affordable housing opportunities at the very low income. The staff report includes a survey of certain cities with higher inclusionary percentages, including Capitola, Los Gatos, and Corte Madera. And while these cities may have higher percentages, what's most important is the effectiveness of these policies. As reported by these cities to HCD, since 2015, Capitola has permitted 0 low-income housing units. Los Gatos has permitted 2 low-income housing units versus a RENA goal of 313. Corte Madera has done much better. However, it's my understanding that none of the low-income units have been built in their 50% affordable housing overlay zones. So even though we'd like to see affordable housing built at a higher inclusionary percentage, unfortunately, these cases provide some real-life context that adopting a higher inclusionary percentage does not necessarily by itself result in the desired policy objective of producing more affordable housing for lower-income households. So a key takeaway here is the importance of the city's commitment to build a 100% or as close as possible affordable community. So rather than having 1 in 4 or 5 units built affordable, 100% of the units, or at least a much higher percentage, are affordable. Also, building fewer units will reduce impacts to our infrastructure and traffic. Lastly, thank you for your commitment to adopting meaningful policies which will help address our housing affordability challenges. And thank you for your service.
Thank you. And then our next speaker is Kim Piker. Kim, you can start when ready.
Hello, thank you, Mayor Blakespear and City Council for this opportunity. I also I want to express that this idea of inclusionary housing at a 50% rate for R30 overlay, that it sounds really good, and without really looking at it closely, it would be the type of thing that I would maybe be in favor of, which is lots and lots of affordable housing as a percentage. But when I look more closely at it, what I'm concerned about, and the other two speakers have referred to this in different ways, is that we really wouldn't have any affordable housing, as opposed to a lower percentage rate, and then we'd actually be able to build something. That we really wouldn't have any because developers really couldn't afford to build, and we'd run into problems with HCD and so on. So thank you very much for letting me share.
Thank you. And then I'm just doing a double check. I still don't see Patricia Vasquez, so that does conclude speakers on this item.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate the public speakers who all took the time to really think about this and read it and give us the true analysis of the way they see it. I think in the public dialogue and the civic discourse, we hear all the time that we should go with 50% or we should require 100%. And as Bob Kent just said, he looked at those cities and that resulted in approximately 2 or 0 affordable units actually being built. And so in many ways, it's not achieving our objectives. I mean, if we're serious about wanting to build affordable housing, we need to commit to that through our city's use of our city funds, as well as having policies and programs that promote that. And then I really appreciate Joshua Lazarson, who has such a radio voice. I wonder if he's been a radio person or television voice. I don't know him, but it was striking me the whole time he was speaking. yeah, that basically, you know, we need to have what HCD will support. There's no reason for us to walk into more lawsuits over our housing policies or housing proposals. And I think it's also important, and this was referenced by Bob Kent, that when we're talking about incentives, what are the incentives we'd need to build 50% affordable? It's things like going taller, going to 10 stories, having higher or unlimited density, or having city subsidies. Those are all things that the community would not support. So it's very appealing, as Kim Piker said, to say, oh, in concept, this is great. But then when you start looking at the reality of it, it doesn't accomplish any of our goals, and it might have other consequences that we're just not willing to accept. So I see some of my colleagues have their hands up, but I want to ask both Barbara Kautz and Paul Mara, who both live in this world, your professional answer to why it is that you do not recommend that we accept a 50% affordability or some higher percentage than what's being recommended by staff. And we can start with Barbara. I see her on screen, but you're muted.
Yeah. You know, this test for an inclusionary ordinance is that it cannot be confiscatory. That's in the California Supreme Court case on inclusionary, that it's treated like a rent control or a price control. And so it cannot be confiscatory, which the court defined as allowing an owner a reasonable rate of return. And I think and that's exactly what the KMA reports were looking at, and concluded that, you know, in the generality, the inclusionary percentage could not be increased by more than 5% to generally ensure that owners would have a reasonable rate of return. And that's why we do not believe that you can do that adoption of a 50% inclusionary requirement would conform with that. In addition, the inclusionary ordinance cannot pose a constraint through the construction of affordable housing. And perhaps, as you saw in those statistics that were presented, it seems that these very high inclusionary percentages actually did pose a constraint.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Paul?
Thank you, Mayor Blakespear. I believe our feasibility study has demonstrated the upper limits for the R30 sites that have low base zoning versus the R30 sites that have high base zoning or non-residential zoning today. Our feasibility analysis demonstrates that a property owner or developer will be motivated if the R30 zoning, inclusive of whatever inclusionary is required, leaves them equal or meaningfully better off than they would have been if they stayed with the base zoning. And that's what we've modeled in the study for every one of those sites that we tested. We modeled build out under the base zoning versus build out under the R30 with the various inclusionary requirements. And I think it's important for folks to understand that a multifamily apartment building, multi-level, internal corridors, structured parking, all of that costs much more per foot than single family or townhome construction. And that product is likely to be for rent. And even though rents are amazingly high to all of us, they're not as sky high as prices. There's not the same sort of ceiling on market pricing in your community as there is on how much people are willing to pay in rent, because at some point people no longer rent, they buy. So I just want to leave you with the notion that this higher density development costs much more per foot to build. And ultimately the market units have, there's some ceiling of how much market rent they're going to collect. So that's what we found, is there's just a limit to how much added value there is for the developer and how much of that you can take in the form of a higher inclusionary requirement.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor Blakespear. I really am clear that the staff recommendation is the direction to go or near that. But one thing that I haven't heard our experts address yet, and I'd like maybe Paul Mara to address this, is we have a very smart planning commission, and they have, I think they really would like a higher percentage, and that's what their proposal is. And they are, some of the details behind that are they're looking at the calculations to get there with a different model. This is not my area of expertise, so I understand that the KMA report was best practices as far as how you do the calculations. I would just like, if you could, to explain what those best practices are that differ from what our planning commission is looking at, and hopefully reinforce that the best practices you use to come to your conclusions are what the rest of the cities in the state also use, and that is traditional. Could you respond to that?
Sure, Council Member. Well, first of all, we do use similar methodology whenever we do these types of studies in various communities in terms of the approach to the feasibility analysis. It's definitely adjusted for local zoning, land use patterns, development trends, market conditions. There's a lot of discussion about whether we are looking at an outcome in terms of supportable land value versus an outcome of developer profit. And I recall answering a question at the Planning Commission. It doesn't really matter which way we push the financial model to express the outcome as either residual land value to a property owner or increased developer profit to a developer. We're still capturing all of the arithmetic. I didn't study the commissioner's pro formas extensively. I realize we do have some different inputs and assumptions. In our models, we've laid out for you our cost estimates to build all of the different housing types, from low density single family to higher density apartments. We've laid out our market pricing and our market rents, so it's all there. We use that math to see if how it's a carrot and stick. How hard of a stick can the project accept before the economics collapse? And when there's the added density that is generated from the R30 overlay, that's the carrot. And is that carrot strong enough to offset the stick? So that's what we're measuring. So I know there was a lot of discussion at Planning Commission about KMA failed to pick up windfall profits, and that's not true. We are testing the entire measure of feasibility for, there's 100 scenarios in the 300-page study. They're all there. And I think what it boils down to is this higher density product is more expensive to build, and market rents are not infinite. So there's only so far you can extract an affordability requirement. But I do want you to know it's our standard methodology. And I think even more importantly, we do see our competitors' studies throughout the state, and it's their standard methodology as well. It's a very typical approach. So really the devil would be in the details of the inputs and assumptions. So I hope that was responsive to your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Blakespear, sorry to interrupt. We do have one more public speaker. There was some miscommunication on the registration.
Okay.
Okay. Christine Schindler. Christine, there you go. Christine, you just need to unmute your microphone. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I thought I had unmuted. Christine Schindler, East Encinitas. Thanks, Kathy. I really didn't need to make comments, though. The discussion's been interesting to hear. I realize with affordable housing, I know very little, and all the details matter. Mine is just an expressed desire so that overall we are able to support truly affordable housing so that Encinitas can be a generational city where kids can continue to live here we can be diverse, we can have multiple income levels, and be an inclusive community. I lived in Solana Beach for more than 15 years, wanted to continue to live there. Because of the lack of diversity in housing, it just wasn't possible. So I moved to Encinitas reluctantly, but now I'm very happy that we did. We have more housing stability here. We were able to purchase a home. I just want friends, neighbors, others to be able to live in Encinitas, and I just want it to be a very equitable and diverse community. And I know that's what you're working toward, and I thank you for your efforts. So that's all. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So now we have Councilmember Mosca.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the public that signed up to speak. The comments were spot on, especially Christine Schindler's comments about what the goal that we're all focused on and what we're trying to achieve here. Thank you to KMA, our consultant, who has been with us for a bit, and thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you to our legal counsel on board here, helping us along with this process, which is always, you know, tons of pitfalls and things that we have to look out for. So thank you for your help. I just want to just kind of, you know, just talk a little bit about where we find ourselves. Inclusionary zoning ordinance is really one of the only, you know, ways that we can require folks to developers to produce low income and very low income housing, affordable housing for us. And especially with our regional housing needs assessment sites, providing they're not under state density bonus or some other state incentive program. Really, the inclusionary zoning ordinance is one of the only ways that we can require them to produce some level of affordable housing in our city. So it's important. This isn't a critically important issue. It's critically important to get it right as well. I'm happy that you know, for me and for several of us, this is the second time that I've had an opportunity to raise this rate. You know, in my time on the city council, it hadn't been looked at much. You know, prior to us being on city council, myself and Deputy Mayor Kranz and Mayor Blakespeare, who raised it the last time. And so we've actually we've done our hardest. We've worked hard on trying to build a solid case for increasing this number as high as we can, so that we can produce as much affordable housing as we can. As Christine Schindler said, the goal here is truly affordable housing in our city, because we recognize that there's so many things that are going to come from this truly affordable housing. And so we've done our best to raise it up as much as possible and make that case. And I think that what KMA has presented is a defensible, solid case that we can take to the state and take to others. Although we already see the BIA and others calling into question some things, even at the level that KMA is suggesting. And so, but I do think that we're on solid ground with what has been presented. And so the 5% citywide increase, I think, is reasonable, and it again pushes us in the right direction. We're making small changes, although if you look over the longer period of time, we've gone up considerably from several years ago. And so I think that we're moving in the right direction. I like that we're adding a residential care facility impact fee. I think the $20 per square foot is reasonable. I like the in lieu fee where we're going with the $20 per square foot. I like the sliding scale as well. That's something that we've talked about before. I think it makes a lot of sense. And so I think I hit on all of the things that staff asked about. But I also think that what we need to do is pivot as quickly as possible from this to talking about a 100% affordable housing project that we put together. We need to talk about all of the different elements of that, because it's not going to happen overnight. It really takes a strong commitment by our city council. And I am absolutely committed to seeing that we build something in the neighborhood of 100% affordable housing in our city. So I'll support this. And I think that, let's see, is there any other, I think that was all of the all of the amendments are in line. And I don't see any other items that you've asked us for input on. So I'm not sure about the economic, Jennifer, I'm not sure about the economic analysis, the study. I'm not sure what further analysis would be uncovered in that, what we would be looking at. But if you want to talk about that at some point, but I'm not leaning toward doing an economic study, an additional study. But if you can tell me what the outcome of that economic study would be, then maybe I would be in favor of that.
It would be to look at what incentives would be required to increase that affordability level beyond what's recommended through KMA study.
So if we wanted to go to the 50%, and as a state saying that you'd have to layer on top of more incentives, then the economic study would be essentially looking at what those local incentives would be. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a problem with the mute. I'm sorry, I'm on a bit more of a learning curve than some. I appreciate hearing my colleagues and all of the history and expertise with this, but I do have one remaining question having to do with the in lieu fee and the impact fees. According to, if I'm understanding this correctly, the KMA study recommends for the in lieu fee a range between $32 and $66 per square feet, but staff is recommending 20. Am I understanding that right? And if I am, why are we recommending something so much lower?
Actually, the numbers is what that you referenced is what is supported by the study, but not the actual recommendation for what the fee would be. So that's in a different section.
Wait, hold on a second. Can IT please mute Christine Schindler? Seems like, okay, it sounds like it's died down here. So go ahead, Jennifer, so we can hear you.
Sure. So the numbers, and I'll have Paul here, but the numbers that are that range are about what is supported by the study, but not what is recommended as a fee. So it's a different aspect of it. Paul wants to support or help fill in the gaps on that.
Would you please, Paul?
Yes, council member. So we look at three approaches to setting a fee. The nexus analysis yielded results ranging from $32 to $66 per foot of building area, with the residential care at $49 per foot of building area. Those are the maximum fees that you could adopt based on our study that are legally defensible, based on the nexus, the impacts these market rate residential developments or the residential care facility have on the need for affordable housing. So that's the first approach. It sets an upper ceiling of what fee the city could adopt. Most cities prefer to just adopt a single fee, not a fee that varies by townhome versus single family versus garden apartments. And the way that's done is right away the fee cannot exceed $32 because it has to be under the low end of the range. Right? If you were to adopt a single fee, it's got to be the lowest of all the fees, right?
I see now.
Okay. And then the second and third approach are the economic feasibility analysis, where we say what we do basically is if a developer were to build the required affordable units on site, what is the financial impact to their project? What would otherwise be a market rate project? What is the financial impact of having to do these affordable units? And the third approach is if you were to take a developer's money, to you in the form of a fee, and you were to build these units offsite somewhere else, how much money do you need to create the same number of affordable units? And these latter two approaches point us in the low 20s, the low 20 per foot. So just to summarize all the different math we did. So we got ourselves to sort of a ceiling of 32 And then in testing the feasibility, well, developer would otherwise build it on site. When you do take their money, you're going to presumably get it built off site. Those figures were pointing around $20 per foot as a typical level.
Great. Thank you for the explanation. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. If it's possible for Kieran or somebody to give me some authority to do some muting, I'd just like to be able to make sure we don't have too much feedback that continues. So if that's possible, I'd appreciate that as the chair.
Karen, can you please mute Christine Schindler? Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Councilmember Hinsey.
Thank you. So I'm in agreement with my council members who weighed in on this, that it's the right decision at this time for us to follow staff's recommendations rather than going forward with a 50% inclusionary. And I think it's important for me to just stand up for my generation and the generation that I'm a part of that's coming to this discussion with a really different perspective on the creation of new housing. And I understand the priority. We really want to see these numbers of affordable housing increase, but it's also really important that we as a city provide market rate housing that's accessible to the middle class, because that is the community character of our city. And all of the apartment buildings that were created prior to incorporation in 1986 are really what is making it possible to have naturally occurring affordable here in our city. So when I look at this option that we have tonight to extend study of 50% inclusionary, to me, it doesn't seem worthwhile, in that we already have 9 of our 15 housing applications that have submitted pre-application for SB 330. So they're already going to go forward with this 20% by right plan to build that 20% on site. So there's really only 4 sites left that might be worth studying to see what kind of incentives or opportunities the city can provide to get to that 50% number. Am I correct in that line of thinking, or is there anything else that might make it worthwhile for us to direct staff to continue with this study for 50%?
It is correct that those all but 4 have submitted SB 330 applications, and of those that have submitted, there are 3 that are currently under review, and they may or may not be deemed submitted by the time that this ordinance is passed by the Coastal Commission. And as a SB 330 application, they are locked in on all ordinances as they are currently on the books.
Okay, so if we did further study this, you know, we haven't been able to complete our El Camino Real corridor vision study. So there really would only be 4 more projects that we would study. From Paul's opinion, do you think that it's worthwhile for us to continue, or does your report provide enough information that we can kind of anticipate what we'd see?
Councilmember Hinsey, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because I'm fully on record that I think our report arrived at valid conclusions, and those do not exceed 25% affordable requirement on the R30 sites. So it would really be a role for a different consultant. Study further. I do hear there's only a few sites that would be impacted by that requirement. I understand. Okay.
Well, I think from my perspective, you know, we realize this time and again, it's taken a really long time for this inclusionary proposal to even come before us, because there has been so much diligent work and rigor from the Planning Commission and from our city staff. And to me, it seems like it might be worthwhile now to pivot to other ways to preserve our existing affordable, if that's, you know, if we can pursue some type of an ordinance that prohibits down zoning so that we can preserve some of our tiny beach cottages that provide livable homes, or, you know, another ordinance of that kind. I think that's probably where our efforts are most well spent. And also just figuring out how to create more missing middle housing in our city with the constraints that we have. I think that that's all that I have to say, aside from the fact that as Kim Piker stated, you know, this looks really good on paper, and of course we would love to have more affordable housing, but there's really a tipping point that we can see quite clearly, that what the result of going higher with inclusionary is that we fail to construct any new housing. And it's really important to me that we do construct new housing. And of course I want it to be beautiful and high quality, and some of these apartment buildings that we will see to look great and be consistent with our community character. But I don't want to tip it so far that they're never built. And for me, that's one way that we can get real about the housing crisis, and for Encinitas to play a role in alleviating homelessness and all the other problems that our state is facing. You know, I think that there's a myth out there that if we don't build this housing, people will move out of California or they'll go elsewhere. And I really don't think that's the case. I think we see just more homelessness. And so it is important for me that this city council and that all of us take responsibility to make sure that housing is built, but that also we're getting the most affordability possible. So that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Krantz.
Yes, thank you. There are a couple of issues, a couple of points that I want to explore a little further. The term confiscatory has come up, and maybe Barbara could speak to that a little bit more. You know, it's used in a way that would suggest that if we were to go to 50% affordable, that there wouldn't be any income generated by those units, that the city would essentially be taking them. But the reality is what we would be doing is essentially establishing rent control. There would be a limit, an upper limit, a ceiling on what the rent would be. So the cap rate would go up, and you know, it would have those sort of impacts, but we're not confiscating anything. They're just getting less money for those units. Isn't that true?
That's true, but the way the court defined confiscatory, they said the requirement could not be confiscatory, and then went on to say that meant that the owner needs to be able to receive a reasonable rate of return. So it really is an economic feasibility issue, not a takings issue, or not something about confiscating property.
Well, so that presents a bit of a conundrum, because you can't really do that analysis until you know what the market rates are and, you know, the end result of the development. I mean, you can do the pre-analysis and you can make some assumptions, but the reality is that these developers have no guarantee that what they're going to get for their apartments are going to be, you know, higher than the 80% AMI. So doesn't it beg the question of, you know, how, when you make these assessments about whether it's confiscatory or not?
Well, yes. And so, I mean, so what's done is what KMA has done is that you take what you know about prices versus costs, prices, you know, the rents that somebody can get versus the cost of building. Right now, the cost of construction, you know, if you convert the low and very low income rents to what the developer would get. Now that can be calculated pretty consistently. And then you look at what it would cost to build the units in terms of what, let's say, a mortgage and equity would take. You know, the cost to construct the units is much more than the, you know, results in, Paul can probably explain this better than I can, but the cost to construct the units does not make it feasible to rent them at low and very low income rents. I mean, you can figure that out right now.
Okay.
That's why affordable projects not only need, if you're thinking about 100% affordable projects, it needs not only free land, but it also needs substantial subsidies in the form of tax credits. And you cannot get tax credits unless there's a substantial city subsidy in addition. So, you know, 50% affordable, obviously the subsidy would be less, but for the 50% of the units that are constructed that are paying, you know, can only charge low income rents, that's not enough to pay for the cost of constructing the units.
Okay, the other question relates to density bonus versus our inclusionary ordinance. If a developer were to invoke density bonus and our inclusionary ordinance was a higher percentage, would they would the density bonus law override our inclusionary ordinance percentage?
It doesn't override the city's inclusionary percentage, but a developer might need to provide more affordable units in order to qualify for a higher density bonus. For instance, many of the developers in the R30 lots are proposing 20% affordable units in order to get a 35% density bonus. If they wanted to take advantage of the 50% density bonus, they would need to provide 24% affordable low-income units. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I do actually want to encourage that we proceed with further studies. And what I would be interested in studying is how we can come up with a voucher program that would reinvest some of the incremental tax increases that we're going to see from these R30 overlay developments back into a voucher program that would allow people to to qualify for lower, very low income rent, so that we essentially are subsidizing with a voucher so that we can increase the number of units. And I don't know what it would take. It would take some work with HCD, I'm sure, and coming up with a policy that might meet muster with them, so that there's a way to buy up our inclusionary, our affordable units. I think that's pretty important. The other question, if we didn't do a voucher program, is what kind of subsidies it might take in order to get some of these existing projects that are in the works to have a higher percentage of affordability. I also wanted to share with the public the emails that we got. We get this email from Mr. Hutter of Alan Matkins, who is representing the BIA. And 5 minutes later, we get an email from Robin Huntley, basically, kind of cracking her knuckles and making sure that we know that she's paying attention. And I would like to say hello to Robin tonight. But the letter that Tim Hutter sent, had this table in it, and it had a suggestion that we weren't getting there, and that we wouldn't want to disincentivize development. And so we got this document this afternoon from planning staff, and it talks about the HEU sites. It talks about the number of allotted units in the housing element update for each site. It talks about the proposal and the total number of units. It shows what market rate units, the quantity of market rate units, and the number of affordable units in each project. And the problem that we have right now is that if you go down and you add all that up, 1,601 were in Measure U, and so far actually proposed are 2,087. Market rate is more than we even had in Measure U. And the deed restricted affordable, which is what we kind of promised to the public, was going to be the result of our Measure T and Measure U is only at 333. And the reality is we can't get to our arena by continuing to upzone. So it's one of the reasons why it's very important that we look at more studies. How can we get these numbers up? I know our goal is to have a 100% affordable project. That's not going to be enough to get to hit all of our RENA obligation. We just really need to get higher, and it's currently at about 16% affordable, deed restricted affordable. And I just think that it's going to be tough. The public's really kind of souring on this whole thing already, and so I fear that the future in terms of trying to comply with state law. And we've got the prospects of no net loss coming up, and so it's really important that we come up with a strategy that isn't going to put us in this cycle where we constantly have to find more properties to upzone. And the other thing I think is really important that we study or get a better understanding of is how to do conditional upzoning so that we can negotiate issues related to the affordable percentage per project and the nature of the project, so that we don't end up in a situation where we do everything according to the rules that HCD has, and then it turns out that the 1,600 that we had, which included our arena and our buffer, turns out to be 2,087, and is going to be higher if any of these other four get developed. So I think we have a lot of work to do in order to maintain credibility with the public, which I think some people are pretty skeptical of what's going on right now. And let's acknowledge that it's in large part due to the never-ending barrage of more housing law. And I wish that would just settle down so that we could kind of get a handle on all of this. But in the end, we have a lot of work to do. So, my hope is that as a council, we can continue to talk about these things and explore alternatives and solutions that will, solve this problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I just want to make some concluding comments that, to me, it seems like this torturous process, which we've been working on for a long time. And one of the reasons I think that it is so tortuous is because there's a philosophic split around whether affordable housing should be deed restricted by the government, or we should have a supply that is naturally affordable. And so where you lean into how we're getting more affordable housing determines where we're going with this inclusionary percentage. And so it's because, for obvious reasons, if you want as high a percentage as possible, the market rate units have to be the highest end to support a higher percentage at the lowest end. So, for a long time, there was all of this dialogue about how the number should be as low as possible. And it seems like over time, we've come up with a consensus from the Planning Commission, from the constituency, from the professionals that we've hired, that we want to have an inclusionary percentage that's as high as possible so that we're guaranteeing at least some percentage of affordable units in this city, not relying exclusively on just a supply side approach. And that we've hired these professionals who I've always been impressed with the depth of expertise from Paul Mara, and the reports that are produced, and of course, a stellar reputation. And as he talked about, the reports and the way that they put together is the industry standard. So, there is like true expertise here. And I appreciate the depth of interest in this topic from our community members and from our planning commissioners. But I think that we are well served by following the recommendations of the professionals that we've hired. And so I would like us to move forward on this today and to be able to put at least this iteration of the conversation behind us. I think we're in a good position. I hope that we feel really solid in terms of the legal ground. Deputy Mayor just showed the letter and the response, and then the chart. And so, but we really do want to try to have this be legally defensible. I think the last thing we want is to be marching forward into another lawsuit over something like this. And so I do rely on our professionals and our attorney, Barbara, and the professional staff who works for us, Jennifer Gates and Paul, to be recommending something that you think is that right combination of highest percentage affordable that is legally defensible, so that we can, move forward in that way. And I wanted to I had one question in my mind that I wanted to ask Paul, or if you don't know somebody else, do you know what percentage are deed restricted affordable, like in our city in general? The chart that Tony showed 16% of these housing element sites, but we have about 25,000 homes total in our city. Like, what percent are deed restricted affordable?
I do not know. I don't know if city staff has that information.
Do we know, Jennifer?
I do not know the percentage, and I'd have to look and double check by numbers. It's in the housing. We did put it in the housing element of how many that the city staff monitors. and it's over 300 units within the city that we monitor.
Well, that would be substantial. I mean, there were 333 in the chart he showed. So, and that's just the housing element sites. So, I mean, that would have to be pretty low. Barbara, did you?
No, I was just going to say that the number that Jennifer gave you are the ones that are actually built. So the none of the housing element sites have actually been constructed yet.
Right. Okay. That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, the point of that is to say, like, we're talking about the inclusionary percentage is only deed restricted. So we're only talking about 15%, like we're talking about not even probably 5% of our total city's housing stock is this inclusionary percent. I mean, that's what I would guess. And so, you know, the reality of like how we create a community that is affordable for people, the deed restricted is part of it. But part of like our accessory dwelling unit focus is to say the market is producing units that are more naturally affordable because of the nature of accessory units and who they're being rented to. So, you know, there are all these different strategies that are talked about, and this is one of them for a smallish percent, which is really important, but it gets a lot. We talk about it a lot. So, is there a recommendation that city staff could put up that's a reflection of what we've talked about tonight? And I'll also just weigh in that I do, you know, we have a lot of different studies. I don't think any of the incentives are things that would be acceptable to our community. And I would like to try to have a focus on the things that are headed somewhere. And so I would really not be in favor of doing additional studies at this point. I think we should see where this goes. And if we need to do studies in the future, then we can pay for them. But, you know, studies aren't cheap, and we are always talking about how best to use our finances. Okay, so this is the recommendation.
So this is the recommendation. Then the second one, without the 50% inclusionary requirement, which is an attachment 2.
Sorry, so you're saying the staff's recommendation is the second paragraph. So the second part of the or.
That's correct.
And then number 2 on here is to consider that additional study. And then number 3 isn't really a recommendation. Provide direction to staff.
On the in lieu fee amount and the affordable housing impact fee amount so that we can notice it.
Right. Okay. So it says staff recommendations 20, staff recommendations 20. Okay. Councilmember Mosca, I think he had addressed these points. So also, would you like to go ahead, Councilmember Mosca?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to bring back up the point that Deputy Mayor Kranz made about the R30 sites and how we can use some of the incremental money that we've already gathered that has already been paid to us, and perhaps even fees that will be paid in the future. How can we use those funds to increase the amount of affordable housing that each one of these R30 sites is giving us? This is a question that Deputy Mayor Kranz and I have been asking for some time. I'm not sure. I don't know if Jennifer Gates or somebody on this online here can answer the question. You know, it feels like it's never gone anywhere. It's a question that we've asked multiple times. We got $1 million or so sitting in the Affordable Housing Fund. We're looking at potentially more in lieu fees. How do we infuse that into some of these projects? Because it seems to me they're already doing the project. And they're building more market rate than we thought. So if we could actually create a program that would allow us to bring down the market rate and bring up the affordable housing because we've infused some of our capital in there, I mean, it just seems like a win-win. And I'm not sure if the economic study does that or how we actually get there, but we've never actually got to that point. And it's been 2 or 3 years that we've talked about it. And so Deputy Mayor Kranz was kind of going into the line of thinking that perhaps the economic study was that vehicle, but the mayor saying, no, we don't want to do it. So I'm just kind of trying to understand, is that economic study a vehicle to get to that? Or is there some other hurdle that we have to jump that we haven't jumped, but potentially we can?
This great question. I mean, I think this is different than the study and the voucher, but I do think we've asked this question lots and lots of times. So I would love to hear an answer to this question. It's like, is it possible to buy more affordable units in the projects that are already being built?
So the question that's being asked of the developers is how much would be needed to contribute to increase that market, increase the number of inclusionary and or affordable units provided with each project. And they're so far along in their project that all the pro formas and all the information that they've prepared and the loans and their agreements with their different financing is so far along that they don't want to change the project at this point. And so, it's something that I've, keep trying to figure out what that number is, if there is a sweet spot with a certain developer. But like I said, we do only have 1.4 million. And the amount of funds that are going into these projects that I'm looking at in Carlsbad and Vista is like $30 million that cities are providing.
Can I comment on this, please?
Definitely.
Oceanside had a voucher program that was very similar to this, where the city's relationship with the property owner was after the fact. So in other words, there were the resident that was qualifying for a voucher from the city was then, connected with a one of these developments, and the owner of the properties participated in the program. I don't have any of the details about how it worked, but I know Oceanside had one, and maybe our staff could contact Oceanside and ask them about that. I doubt that Oceanside's is the only program like that. So maybe we can plagiarize and find a best practices somewhere that would allow us to do this, and we again would be able to roll back. We're going to see most likely some significant increases in property tax revenue on these sites, and so a percentage of that going back to a voucher program that would create essentially a greater number of affordable units in that project just seems to make all the sense in the world. So I didn't mean to suggest that we should study this. What I meant to suggest is that we should find a program that we can copy. And the same would be true of the other suggestion, which is, that we come up with a strategy to somehow increase these numbers, because it was related to conditional zoning and working with HCD to find out about what's involved as we do our no net loss upzoning, making sure that we have property owners who are committed to the greatest number of affordable units in a project as possible. Our problem was that we created this upzoning bonanza for those property owners, and some of them essentially just sat back and said, okay, here's my property, look at all this density that's possible here, and 30 developers bid on that, buying that from them, and it was just a windfall for the property owners. Some property owners stuck with it, and they're going to entitle it and rent it. So the windfalls for this round has just been incredible. I appreciate the work that Paul Mara is doing, but we created windfall profits for every property owner in our housing element update.
Okay, I totally support that. Evaluating other cities' programs. I think that's a good thing that we could add into the recommendation here. Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you. I appreciate Tony's comments too. I think that sounds innovative, and the right way to do it is to look at what other people are doing and see how it applies to us and how we could. So but that's not the study that is actually being recommended here. I think that this study being part of this recommendation is something different. But I would like to propose a motion and see if I can characterize this in a way where I could get a second, but to accept staff's recommendation, which is really essentially the second paragraph under 1, which is for 15% very low, 20% low for all sites, except for also they're including for R5 or below 20% and 25%. And then the in lieu fee at $20 per square foot, and the impact fee at $20 per square foot, which is 3. And then capture an additional item having to do with a study for other innovative approaches that could supplement what we're doing to make more affordable housing based on what Tony and Joe were talking about and what Catherine was saying sounded good.
Well, look, could I make a friendly amendment that it's not a study? So I don't think we should direct, my feeling is we shouldn't direct an outside study where we hire another consultant, is that we should ask staff to evaluate other cities' programs, like Councilmember Kranz said, Deputy Mayor said about Oceanside. Just like with our accessory dwelling unit program, where it's like other cities took that, like La Mesa just took that wholesale and said, oh good, they did all this work, let's just take that. And it seems like other cities might be advanced in these ways, so that we would ask staff to just to look at the other cities and evaluate those programs.
That's an acceptable friendly amendment.
Yes, Jennifer.
For clarification, Councilmember Lyons, I just want to be clear that the recommendation from staff in the second paragraph is only to do a 20% low and 15% very low citywide, and not to include. So your proposed motion was to modify even higher on R30 sites to the 20 and 25%.
I had thought that that was part of the staff recommendation on the R5 and below to go with the 20 and 25%. So I'm not understanding that correctly then, huh?
Right. So the staff recommendation is to just do 20% low and 15% very low citywide.
All right. I'm intended to explain or to include staff recommendation. So that would be the 15% very low and the 20% low.
So it's basically that second paragraph that's on the screen in front of us, which is, as you can see, there's like an or, right? So the first paragraph or second paragraph. So I think, isn't that what you're saying, Councilmember Lyons? Yes. And Jennifer Gates? Yeah. Okay. And Councilmember Mosca, was that, did you second the motion or?
I'll second the motion. I just want to just make sure that regarding paragraph 3, that it's the $20 for the in lieu per square foot, and it's the new fee for the residential care facility is $20 per square foot. That's what the motion is. Correct, Councilmember Lyons? All right. Yes. Yeah, I second that.
Okay. And then the third part is to ask staff to evaluate other cities' programs to create more affordable units in the city.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Does the city clerk and staff?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. Great.
Are you ready to vote?
I think we are.
Okay. Let's start voting. Councilmember Hensy? Yes. Councilmember Lyons?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosca?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kranz?
Yes.
And Mayor Blakespear?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Barbara. We'll see you at the next thing.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, good. Now we are on to council member initiated item from Deputy Mayor Kranz, e-bike safety. So I'll let you take that.
Yes, thank you. This is what we kicked around a little bit, skirting the Brown Act the other day. I mentioned that I have great concern about some of the things that are happening with young people on e-bikes. And so I think that it would be appropriate to have a special meeting of the city council to discuss the issues of e-bike safety and to impanel a group of people who have expertise in law enforcement, e-bike sales and safety, our bike coalition, and others, and invite as many parents and e-bike riders as possible to join us in the conversation so that we can do everything possible to address some fairly significant safety issues that are cropping up as the popularity of e-bikes increases. It's really important to me that our e-bikes are successful because they are definitely going to make a dent in vehicle miles traveled, automobile vehicle miles traveled in our city. And so I think it's important that before we get to too much further down the road, that we should, as a group of leaders in the city, convene a special meeting to talk about this particular issue.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hensy.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Mayor Blakespear, we do have one public speaker.
Okay, great. Let's hear the public speaker.
And Christine Schindler.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So sorry, I'm being a little high maintenance tonight, so I apologize. I guess I didn't mute myself, so who knows what you heard. So sorry about that. Certainly, I want to support Deputy Mayor Tony's idea of having an e-bike safety summit. I think it's important timing with bike share, e-bike share around the corner, and with things that are happening all across San Diego, but certainly all across our coastal areas and Highway 101. So I am in support of this. I'm helping with the organizing it. I think I think we have to have some sort of incentive to really try to get parents and youth riders to this summit to truly make it worthwhile. So I'm fully on board, cheering you on, doing whatever I need to do. And I'll just listen to the conversation now. I did see that there were two letters submitted, both the e-bike riders themselves and former council members, Lisa Schaefer and Teresa Barth. They're both in support of this as well. So thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing it up, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thanks. And I would point out that I suggested July 10th as the date, but I also did check with city staff, and the community center is also available on July 24th if that is better for more people to be able to participate in a special meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you. So I fully support this idea, and I think it's a wonderful idea. My only hesitation is the timing of the summit, because to really capture the attention of the people that we need, which in my opinion are the parents of kids who are buying them e-bikes, is that they, like Christine said, they need to come and they need to pay attention and they need to understand what the programs are that the city offers. So my suggestion, if Councilmember Kranz is open to it, is to host the summit instead of late July, in either mid-August or late August, when schools, elementary schools are back in session, high schools are back in session, and we have the captive audience of parents and kids who are not on vacation, but they're actually in the city. And also the channels of communication that the school districts can help us to provide. And I think that it's advantageous to us to do it a little later, because that way we can put more time and thought into coordinating the panels and the speakers and any programming that we have at that time, to be able to actually present a set of dates for the sessions that we'll be hosting at the Senior Center for Bike Education. And I also know that Christine has put together some seminars for driver education, which is another element that we need to loop into this. So I love the idea, I love the concept. I just hope that the timing can be better placed to capture the attention of the folks we need.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I think that there's a kind of this cycle of vacations that you're always going to get during the summer. My big concern is that we're going to have a summer full of e-bike riders, operating the way they're currently operating, which in quite a few instances is not very safe. So the delay is a little bit concerning to me. And, you know, I don't know that those dates in August are going to get that much more attention, but, you know, I guess in the end, depending on what the sentiment is, my goal is to have as much participation by the city council as possible, because I think that helps to drive home the point that we want to focus on the issue of safety. So I'll see what others have to say.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call on Councilmember Mosca. He's also was on the school district liaison committee together with Councilmember Hinsey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Krantz, for bringing this item forward. I've said this before, this is on the minds of a lot of folks in our town. You know, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, what we can do in terms of making our roads safer for bikers. And we've had the emergence of e-bikes, which we're seeing just grow in popularity, and more people riding on e-bikes. I actually have an e-bike now. Although you don't have to worry about me, I actually ride my e-bike very safely. And so, but I like how this is also progressing. When I first heard the idea of the summit, I thought this is going to be an opportunity to really share with folks information, you know, everything that we've been doing, and also take input. But now it sounds like it can also be an opportunity to have even like kind of, you know, even more educational component, where you could actually have vendors there set up, and other folks that are engaged in this space that are set up and able to help give information, give products, safety stuff. I mean, we definitely want to do more than just kind of encouraging people. I was even thinking, like, why couldn't we do like we did today and have a special city council meeting, you know, just before our normal meeting? But I think now that I'm hearing it and seeing how it's progressing, I am thinking like this is like a separate standalone kind of, you know, community event at the community center, senior center, where we can bring all the different folks together that are in this space, really make a real, you know, just real strong effort to bring out as many people as possible that this is relevant to. And, you know, let our folks, our city, give out information about what we're doing, receive public information about what else we can be doing, and also provide people with just all of the information that's out there. The timing is critical, you know, and you know, I mean, it's just really critical. We're dark in July. Many of us have been planning vacations, and so July is really hard for me. That third week, kind of the latter part of August, is a good time, but also know that it's right around that kind of last week. I mean, people are just coming back into town, but then it's kind of Labor Day, and so it's for me, it's kind of like mid-September when people start to. I mean, based on my family and based on how I see things, people right around now are, you know, checking out, and they're vacationing, and they're doing a bunch of stuff, and it's going to be terribly difficult, you know. And then come September, everybody's back in town and focused. And so I think the timing is really critical about how we do this, and also planning it out to bring all the different parties together. Okay. But I'm in favor of some vehicle to kind of get the information out there, collect information, and give people best practices and all kinds of safety safety training.
Okay, so a suggestion for mid-September. Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you, Mayor Blakespear. When Deputy Mayor Krantz brought this up last week as an item that he is interested in, I told him that I support him in this, whether it's a special meeting or just the two of us going to meet with the community, that I think there's a lot of value to it. So what I'm happy to hear is there's so much other support too from the council, that this is something that's really important, and that makes me lean in the position lean towards it being a special council activity, not just Tony and I going, or Deputy Mayor Krantz and I. So in communicating that, what I would like to recommend is that we make sure we schedule it in a manner, first of all, as soon as possible, so that it accommodates all of our schedules, given that we're dark in July, and also accommodates what's in the best interest of the children and the parents from the school. And I understand what Councilmember Mosca is saying. He has children in the age group that, or maybe they're slightly younger, but probably in the age group we're talking about. So he knows what he's talking about, but both him and Councilmember Hinsey do have the most contact right now with the education programs at the schools. So what they're recommending, I would lean towards, as long as it also works with our council schedule.
Well, in hearing all this, I don't know if Mayor Blakespear, you have any comments to make before I make a suggestion.
I mean, I was just going to say that, yeah, I do think it's better when we could advertise it at the schools. It would be in September. We could plan it in advance. We could really put some thought into it. I mean, I wanted to hear, like, how do you envision organizing this, where there are 5 council members, and then, like, are we hearing a presentation from sheriff's department, a presentation from the Sugiuses, who sell e-bikes, or others, you know, electro bikes, or others that are creating electric bikes in our city? Or what's the format that you see as being the most useful?
Yeah, that's what I see. A panel of experts that, you know, we would put on maybe somebody from city staff, maybe Captain Taft or his representative would be there to put on a PowerPoint presentation of some concerns that they have or whatever. I mean, yeah, those were details that I was going to pursue once it was established just exactly what shape this was going to take. So Christine Schindler has been super supportive, and I know she'll be in the middle of the panel. Steve Bartram and others have expressed support. They'll help in any way they can. I think that you know, those details will get filled in. The only thing that I'm not keen on September, and I wondered if there might be some consensus to do something like August 14th, which is the weekend. It's the Saturday after our first week back, and we would do it kind of like what Councilmember Hinsey suggested, maybe it was Joe, to invite the vendors, invite bike sale companies and other safety equipment companies, and encourage people who may be considering purchasing a e-bike for their young student to come and talk to the experts and to have the opportunity to browse in one place and participate in this conversation and understand some of the challenges of that we're facing with these e-bikes. Not long ago, I spoke with somebody who was very skeptical of all the efforts that the city council had been making over the years to increase the number of bike facilities that were in our city. And he told me that he's done a 180 and he ended up buying 7 e-bikes for Christmas for all his grandkids. And, you know, this is the sort of thing that we want to encourage. And I'm afraid that what's going to happen is if we don't kind of wrestle this down a little bit and see what we can do to get some of the issues related to safety under control, that we're going to cause people to say, yeah, that's not the right route to go. So anyhow, how does August 14th sound?
Well, so my kids, who both have e-bikes and are going into 7th and 8th grade, go to school starting on August 24th. So, like, I don't think we're going to be able to access those parents, get people. I mean, if the goal is to actually to create more awareness around safety, to say, how are kids riding? What can we do to encourage them to use hand signals, to ride the right direction, to be safe, to interact with drivers? What are the other things we need to do in terms of volunteering or striping or whatever? Like, I really think, like, as Councilmember Hinsey said, advertising at the schools is key. So, you know, so for my kids starting on the 24th, it's like, you're going to have to get a flyer out to them. And I mean, to me, it just goes back to, like, September is really the right month for this.
Yeah, but don't they have email? Don't they get email constantly? Doesn't the school district have email lists, and they can say, hey, you know, if you're thinking about e-bikes, here's a great opportunity for you to come and see what the options are. you know, it's not like the old days, is it? Where that's the first communication you have is when you show up for school the first day?
I mean, the truth is, like, school administrators are on vacation. They are not sending out emails, especially at public schools, and parents are planning their vacations. I mean, summer is 10 weeks. So it's like the rest of the school year you're in, but summer is 10 weeks. So I just feel like we're really making a mistake in not being able to capture the right audience if we do it during that period. I mean, I think we're better off allowing the school districts to carry some of the weight of getting people there. Like if we want, I mean, we really want attendance. And so, you know, us putting it out on our, you know, Facebook page, it's like another bicycle safety thing. Like, I just don't see that's necessarily going to create the people we want. But I'll let others speak. I mean, I don't need to, it doesn't, you know, whatever we decide. Does anyone else have an opinion about that?
We'll call it Cycle Back to School September Summit.
Yeah, I think
I mean, I think broadly, I'm in favor of a summit. I think that, you know, maybe a couple people can work on it. Maybe Tony and somebody else can work on it and come up with more details in terms of the date. I just, you know, being a parent and kind of being involved in the school district liaison committee and knowing how communications go out, I do think that partnering with the school districts as we are now through some of the things that we're doing now, that, you know, it makes sense to kind of wait until the fall to roll things out. But I do feel and understand the anxiousness and desire to get out there as quickly as possible. But you know, if you all think that you can organize it and get people to it, the people that we want to educate and really reach out to, if you think you can do it, the more power to you.
Well, and the other issue in reality is that it's not all about the kids and teaching them safety. Christine and her group, and we just signed a contract with them, and they're teaching monthly classes, and they're doing a ton of outreach, and I really appreciate all the efforts that they're putting into it. But the reality is that there may be some need for additional ordinances to rein in some of the lawlessness that we're seeing, and so, you know, perhaps we can get Assemblymember Berner Horvath's office to participate in this, because the current laws on the books are making it difficult for the sheriff's department to really have an effect on some of the lawlessness that we're seeing. And so, you know, that's an important part of the conversation as well. It's not just about kids. This is about, as a group, as a city council, are we interested in trying to do more in order to, you know, create more ordinance? And so
that's going to be a different topic, because I mean, if you bring a bunch of, you know, OPE parents together and then tell them you're going to pass an ordinance to fine them or make them liable for something, I'm sure that's not going to be a conversation. I mean, these are two different.
Well, don't you think that those parents? Don't you think parents should know that may be the direction we have to go if there isn't some change in the behavior that we're seeing? I mean, that's always been the question. Can you legislate good behavior? And you know, it has been suggested the first time you confiscate a few of these bikes, you're going to get kids' attention. And, you know, the question is whether our current laws allow for the confiscation of bikes. You know, and what behavior does it take to qualify to have your bike confiscated? And if your bike is confiscated, how will the sheriff's department know who the owner of that bike is? It's really amazing. I was out on my bike the other day and saw a kid in the turn lane on Highway 101 getting ready to go down towards, he was turning left from the northbound lane on Highway 101 to go towards Moonlight Beach, and he was 10 years old. And it's just amazing the number of young kids there are out on these bikes, and what we're going to do. You know, they're not licensed, so, you know, how do we manage this? And that is part of the conversation. So it's not all about trying to educate the kids. It's also about, you know, having this conversation with the parents about what's next. What do we do? How do we get this under control?
Deputy Mayor Kranz, I think based on what you're saying, it would be good for us to do a little bit of homework too, where we look at what, I mean, we're not alone here. The whole state you know, everyone's dealing with this. This is not just our issue. And the solution maybe there's a state level solution as well. But I think everyone's looking at this, and it would do us well to see how they're addressing it, and to see what's enforceable, to see what the limits are that people are applying, and how successful it is, whether it's enforcement or whether it's code. And we could take a little bit of time to be well prepared before we go to the families, so that we could not only get their input about, you know, what do they see the issues being, because I think it'd be a great opportunity to hear from them too. We'll learn from them. But also, you know, here's some things where, you know, this is what we see as a couple, you know, a whole range of ways we can address this issue, so that we make it really productive when we're in front of them.
So how about somebody joining me as a bit of a subcommittee to develop the agenda for this event, whatever the event may be, to and then propose a date for a special meeting. And it would not be in July, it would be in August or maybe September, but that would be something that would be determined once we have developed an outline of an agenda.
I would also propose, just, I mean, I think that what I'm hearing, Tony, is that there are two different things happening here too. That I think that there's an idea that the summit would be kind of an educational summit where we're presenting information for families and users of e-bikes, and also, you know, having different vendors and different programs represented. But then there's this other thing about, like, what, you know, with the advent of e-bikes, are there ordinances that we need to update and modify and adjust? And are there state laws that need to be adjusted as well? Like, for instance, I know, you know, at one point we didn't buy an e-bike for our kids, but I had my oldest, you know, loves to pedal, and he's got, like, you know, BMX bike, a downhill bike. He's got all kinds of bikes, and so he's golden. But our younger one doesn't like to pedal all that much, and so we kind of were looking at e-bikes, and I went to the e-bike place, and they're like, you know, we don't really actually make e-bikes for kids. And I was like, what? There's all these kids out there on e-bikes. No, there's no such thing as an e-bike for kids. You can buy it smaller, but law doesn't allow us to build an e-bike for kids. So as Councilwoman Lyons was saying, I mean, you know, maybe there is even state legislation. Maybe there's something, you know, ordinances and state legislation that needs to catch up and adjust to this. I see these as two different kind of forums, if you will. One where you're basically, as you're saying, Deputy Mayor Kranz, kind of bringing some of the experts together and question and having the question of what else can we do to make sure that everybody's safe in our city. But then there's also this kind of summit that we have where we're bringing people together to educate them about you know, what the rules of the road are and all that stuff. And so I would just say that could be a talking something on your agenda to look at, and maybe Councilwoman Lyons and you can work together on that.
So I don't know if you can see my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
So this was the People for E-Bike Summit of 2019. And this year, the summit was held at Canyon Bicycles USA headquarters in Carlsbad, California. And they talked about laws, e-biking study, inspiration, and more. E-bike laws was a session. You know, they talked about a whole bunch of different things here. They talked about the tariffs that were affecting the sales. You know, there's just here's a pretty good example of an e-bike summit. Here is a web page that has all of the state electric bicycle laws, and so it goes through a fairly in-depth look at what the current state of affairs is in each, you know, jurisdiction. So you know, defines e-bike, and has 3-tier classification. You know, this is state level, you know, but the question is, what are the local jurisdictions doing? and how are they managing issues that we're dealing with. And so I think that these are all things that could be very useful to talk about in a summit type environment where you had experts and law enforcement officers come together to have this conversation and for the benefit of the city council and the community.
Councilmember Hensy.
So I know that I think it's the Environmental Commission and no, it's Traffic and Public Safety Commission and Parks and Rec commissioners. They're coming together to draft an e-bike policy. And I'm just, it's kind of confusing for me to think about this idea, Tony, of somebody confiscating a bike. Is that the sheriff's department that would do that? Because in my experience with the sheriff's department, something that was frustrating was that the city of Encinitas, we had more rigorous mask requirements than other jurisdictions in the county. And the sheriff's department wasn't willing to enforce our local policies on masks. And so I don't know that the sheriff's department's going to enforce something that we come up with here just at the city level. And I don't know who would enforce that. And so to me, it's like where I think we're headed is we need to get this policy in front of us. And maybe Jennifer Campbell or whoever is helping that subcommittee of the commissioners draft this policy can give us an update as to when that policy will be coming forward. But that timing is important. And also just having some clarity over, what can we as a city do to improve the behavior? And then what's the sheriff's department willing to enforce? Because I don't know that they're willing to enforce things that we put in place here. So from my observations of seeing, because I attended some of the assemblies at Oak Crest and saw what the sheriff's department is presenting on, there's this really high level of excitement from the students' part to learn. And so I think that's our greatest, if we can harness that energy of the excitement of the students where they're wanting to hear about how to operate a bike and they're curious to know how to be safer out there, that's where we really can change things.
Yeah, I think that passively letting this work its way through the bowels of the commissions is not an approach that I think is the right one. I think that this is an urgent issue that the city council should weigh in on sooner rather than later. I know that we will, it's in our best interest to find best practices and to see what's worked in other jurisdictions and know the state of the law in Sacramento and so on and so forth. But ultimately, it's about showing leadership as a city council and addressing what I'm afraid is going to result in a disaster. With regard to the sheriff's department, my point is that they are currently dealing with kids who are less than 16 and therefore do not have identification. And many of these kids who are lawlessly riding their bikes are also unwilling to provide any identification to the officers. So the question is, what steps can the sheriff's deputy take at that point? I don't know. And yes, if lawlessness without a licensed operator means that a bike is confiscated, then maybe that's what needs to happen. But I don't know what they're doing in other jurisdictions, and I do think it's something that we should learn more about sooner rather than later. I'm just concerned about waking up one day to a disaster, and that's what's been driving me all along. I got some communication from Nico Sugias, who's well connected with this group. He's conducting the classes, and he's concerned about what he's seeing. These operators don't know the rules of the road, don't know hand signals, don't know how to get from the right-hand side of the road over into the left turn lane, and there's just a lot of stuff going on. Kids are riding in crosswalks, they're riding on sidewalks, they're riding the wrong way on streets. It's to me an urgent problem. And if it's just me that considers it urgent, then so be it. But it's my hope that we as a council can show some leadership on this particular issue.
I mean, I guess I don't see that a bicycle licensing program is going to happen at a city level. I think it would happen at a state level.
Cities do register bikes. And usually it's a little more passive of the registration. It's just so that the sheriff's department knows whose bike it is if they if they come across a garage full of stolen bikes, they know how to get the bikes back to the owners. So registration of bikes is not uncommon in cities, and that would give the sheriff's department an opportunity to, if it was a requirement to register your bike, that way a sheriff deputy would know who owned that bike, who's responsible for that bike.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a little bit concerned about a government overreach kind of positioning that we're.
Well, I am too, and that's why I think it's important that we talk about it and what qualifies as an overreach. And for some people, it's their threshold is going to be a little bit different. If it means that we're going to have safer operators, my threshold might be a little lower, but that's definitely something that each one of us is going to bring different to the table.
Okay. So the thing that you put on the screen right there, to me, that seemed maybe a bit more like a conference almost, like where there's at 10 a.m. you hear from this expert and at 11 from this person, and it was run by a bike, bike.
Yeah, it's a group, right? That's what it seemed like, and it was a summit, and they had different breakout sessions probably and such. For me, it's about, what do we do in Encinitas to address some of the safety concerns that have been presented? And it's all over next door. There are plenty of people that are really bothered by the way things are going in the city. So, with regard to e-bike and e-bike safety, it's a topic of conversation that I thought we could address head on. So, maybe Joy and I can spend a little time developing an agenda for a possible summit in August.
Okay. I mean, yeah, why don't you work together with staff to figure out the availability of the space? And I mean, my preference is that it's after school, goes back in. I mean, I do know that we have, the calendar doesn't have council meetings because of religious holidays for the beginning weeks of September. So maybe it's possible to have, since we're not having a council meeting, we could have the summit, I don't know. But anyway, I'll let this nascent subcommittee look at that and work with staff on that. Does that seem like something?
The other thing too is I said August, September, or Kelly had said August, and I said late August, September, because it was really trying to bring in the constituency that Kelly and I have been working with through the school district liaison committee, and the folks that, as my husband, the president of the PTA for OPE, and all of the folks around that, bringing them into the fold. But I think that Deputy Mayor Kranz, what you're talking about is more of a policy maker kind of summit. And so I think that that's different than kind of bringing the families together. I do think that there's also room for this kind of educational summit, which I think is critically important, is the education. And so, I mean, I don't know, it sounds like, potentially you could have, a policy type summit earlier. I mean, you could have it, whenever you want to get it off the ground. The September date would be, when can we actually get the families and the children so we can actually educate them or give them information and materials and stuff. That I think that timing is the kind of the fall, but a kind of a policy summit could happen whenever you're able to get all the folks together. And that the goal of that would be to inform us in terms of what ordinances, what recommendations you want to bring, or we want to hear as a city council, either actions that we can take or that we would forward to our state assembly members. That I think that's.
Yeah, and I tend to be an incrementalist, so I was kind of approaching this with a carrot and stick idea, where you talked about the carrot of operating more safely, and here are the existing laws, and if we can't get things to improve, by education, we are going to have, here are some alternatives that we might have. So, I'm not suggesting that we, adopt, we introduce ordinances without a whole lot of effort in trying to educate people to be more safe without those tools. But I think it's worth a conversation with the sheriff's captain and his team to see what they might be able to use in order to improve the responsiveness of the young people that are out riding in a lawless fashion.
It's interesting too that every time the sheriff comes back and reports on this too, is that the tickets that they give out are to the spandex riding cyclists and not to the young e-bikers. So I don't know if the reason for that is what you just stated, is that you can't give a ticket or a citation to young people. I don't know, but what we get reported back are the folks blowing the stop signs and all the traffic violations are coming from the spandex riders. Now, I'm not trying to say that they're all renegades or anything like that. I'm just saying that it's not the e-bikers that we've been getting information on.
Well, I was wondering about the idea of, like, what do you think if it is more like a conference or a summit where, like, we have the city council at 9 a.m. for an hour, and then we have the sheriff at 10, and then we have those who sell e-bikes and are involved in it at 11, and then we have advocacy groups, Christine Schindler and Bike Walk Encinitas and the Bicycle Coalition at 12. So people can decide which hour they want depending on what their interest is.
Yeah, I think that there's some benefit to that, and so let's maybe Joy and I get together and talk with Nico and Kevin Cox and the sheriff's captain and see, and of course Pam and her team, to see what we can come up with for a strategy. And
I think that's a good use of our time in July, Tony, is to do that outreach. I agree.
I mean, I just want to make sure that we think the best. I'm always happy to have Joy be involved in things, but because we have a school district liaison committee with deals directly with the schools, if either of the other two feel like they would like to do it instead.
I was thinking the same thing, Catherine, and I was thinking they would raise their hand if they were interested. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm interested in it, obviously, but Joe or Kelly may have better background.
So I am absolutely interested in it, and this is something I've been looking at for a while, and Kelly has been as well. Unfortunately, it's like, not unfortunately, I mean, we have, after the pandemic, this summer is just it's a time for the kids are away and different stuff, and so we're kind of traveling, seeing family. I'm in and out, and so I don't want to give this short shrift, and so I don't feel like I have the bandwidth during the summer to kind of dedicate to this.
Well, and my goal would be to come up with a strategy that, gave everybody an opportunity to participate in the meat and potatoes of this, whatever it is that is the result of our collaboration with these other people.
Yeah, I would like to take part. I have some things going on in my personal life that are going to be dominating this month that we have off. And so I'm hesitant to sign up for this, but I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of things that I can contribute, and I can definitely contribute them through the city manager to the subcommittee or whatever the right way of going about it is. I mean, I think it would be really awesome if Nico and the other bike vendors in town would be willing to offer a discount to anybody who took part in a training. I think, we could probably get a bike donated for anybody that wants to attend the summit and go through some of these educational seminars. I mean, I think we pretty much are in a really great position here at the city of Encinitas that we have a bike share coming online soon. They'll probably want to donate their time and resource. I mean, this conversation to me is pretty rife with ideas and inspiration and direction. So maybe you don't even need a subcommittee. Maybe we all just spend a little bit of time communicating to staff what our expectations are and let it take shape that way.
I appreciate that. I still think that, hearing from, I'd like to work with the city manager and the captain and talk with Nico and his and Kevin and explore, what shape they think would be best. Work with Christine. So, I could do that as an individual if you prefer. But if Joy is up for working with me, I would appreciate that.
I don't have any big life events going on. I'm I'm available.
That's what everybody's talking about, going on vacation. I don't ever go on vacation. What the hell?
I'm just here. I'm happy to try to be a conduit for some of the thoughts that I'm hearing here, and kind of also I'm getting an update on the Ciclavia Encinitas from Nick Buck next week, and I think there's a lot going on. We'll try to connect the dots together, Tony, and create something that's good.
Good. Well, it sounds like that's the subcommittee then. And I do encourage, okay, there's city manager hand up. Yes.
So two things. One, I wanted to let Councilmember Mosca know that his kids called and they don't want him to talk about how they ride their bikes anymore during a council meeting. We're all anxious to see if Kelly's actually eloping during this time period that she's going to be gone. But seriously, I just want to clarify for this. So have we settled on a date? Because I'm a little bit confused. Are we, the subcommittee is going to work together, but we're looking at something that could possibly happen in September?
My preference is still August, but let's talk about what shape this is going to take, and then we can figure that out, and then you can work with the mayor and see if she's up for calling a special meeting.
I mean, I think we need to check with the scheduler to make sure that the council can make it. So if we're doing it on a day that's not a council meeting, which, you know, we all plan our lives around the council meetings. If it's on a different day, then I think we need to do that as a courtesy, so that we don't have, you know, 2 or 3 people missing this really important summit.
Absolutely.
So you are open to a special meeting in July or August?
Not July.
I think we're leaning towards August.
Roger that. Thank you.
But that doesn't mean that Tony and I won't make progress during July. I think we can.
Okay, so I think we've formed a subcommittee, after all of that conversation. And I do encourage the city manager or the subcommittee, to the extent the Brown Act allows it, to communicate with Councilmember Hinsey. I mean, her main way she gets around is on her e-bike, and she just did a bicycle education course for like 8 hours. And she is deeply embedded with all of the different cycling groups, and has a deep knowledge of you know, all the different people and everything. So I know that she's not on the subcommittee, but I do really encourage her to add her thoughts. I mean, she just rattled off 5 of them without even having to think about it. Yeah. So, okay. So subcommittee is formed. I think there's consensus for that, and we will let you go forward and do your work and get back to us with some suggestions. So let's move on with our meeting. Where are we? Let me go back to that.
We are at City Council member reports pursuant to AB 1234.
Okay. Does anybody have any they want to report?
I had a North County Transit District meeting where we discussed issues related to the Sandag Regional Transportation Plan, and the board unanimously supported the chair of NCTD sending a letter to the chair of Sandag. So Catherine, have you received that yet from me?
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a lot of questions NCTD has about how the 5 big moves that are going to actually change the direction that we were headed before, and what these shovel-ready projects are going to end up, where they will end up, and there's a lot of resources that have gone into preparing these projects for construction, and so there's a desire to have a good understanding of what the new RTP is going to mean for those particular projects. There were several other, I think, very well-formed questions, and I'm sure Sandag staff is going to do a great job of responding to them, but they're important questions, I think.
Okay, good to know. We continue to get a lot of emails about the Del Mar fence, so presumably you're still working on that.
Yeah, it's still a matter that's being negotiated, and you know, we're hopeful that we can come to some resolution. You know, there's I did take my walk on the bluff. There's fence there currently. There would be more fence, but it would be in areas where very few people could even tell that it was there. There are key places where people trespass on those bluffs, and there will be some impacts to those areas, but ultimately there are significant issues related to the Federal Railroad Administration and other issues related to being a Class 1 railroad that we need to address.
Yeah, so there actually is a fence right now.
There are parts of fences all over the place, and so there will be more fence as a result of what NCTD is proposing. But what we're attempting to do is put fence where it is not going to impact the view shed, and in many ways not even impact the use of the current use of the right of way that people have assumed as legal. The key question for the city of Del Mar is whether they're going to assume liability for residents of Del Mar and tourists using that right of way, because NCTD is not willing to assume liability for the free use of NCTD right of way. The placement of the fence is driven by the willingness of the jurisdiction accepting some liability, and we know all about that.
We do. Yes. Okay. Good to hear the update. Okay. Well, we have August 11th is our next city council meeting, which will be in person. It's our first meeting after our break, which we historically wear a Hawaiian shirt to recognize the Hawaiian weather, which we're currently having right now, Puerto Vallarta type weather here, humidity and all. So I think we'll see everybody in person in your best Hawaiian shirt if you have one. So we're adjourned. Bye-bye.
Summer break.